All right. Everyone is basically prepared. We're sorry we're a few minutes late. We're just catching up with some technical issues here. But let's go ahead and start our January 23rd board meeting, and with a call to order and establishment of a quorum. So, Natalie, if you could make the roll call.
Steve Weeks.
Present.
Callie Mayfam.
Present.
Megan Ellis. Present. Tanya Fairley.
She's here.
Yeah.
Steve has it.
Here. Uh-oh. Right on. There.
She's here. Kelly Funk.
Present.
Reese Isbell.
Here.
Yolanda Jimenez.
Present.
Colette Kavanaugh.
Present.
Danielle Munoz.
Present.
Jacob Rostovsky.
Present.
All right. Apparently, we definitely have a quorum, if not a super quorum here today. I think this is the first time we've seen a full board. When every member of the board is here, we've got new appointments and fresh faces, and it's all wonderful. Speaking about wonderful in the new board, I'd like to welcome Colette Kavanaugh, also as our first licensed electrologist the board has had in a very long time, and that was a very needed position you're filling there. So your input's going to be very valuable, and we'll listen very carefully to what you have to say. And let me just say, as far as remarks, I just have a few. As my term of president of this board comes to an end, I've had the honor of working with board colleagues, all of you, who have enacted some of the most significant changes our board has ever accomplished. Very significant changes. Starting with coming out of our Zoom meetings due to COVID, we've accomplished together many significant improvements in our operations. We had very successful sunset hearings. The passage of SB 803 was a major accomplishment and has a major impact on how our board operates. With the significant lowering of hours of study, we passed something on to our future students too. The hairstylist only license, which we enacted, PSP. We've dealt with changes in our apprentice program and looked at that carefully. We're now diving into a new strategic plan to update that. And we're even beginning working on a call center to give staff some break and make us even more effective. So we still have goals to accomplish, but I'm sure with the composition of the board, we will successfully navigate any challenges that the future may bring us. So I thank you for that. And let me move on to the next item, which are board members' remarks. Does any board member have any general comments they would like to, Reese?
Good morning. I wanted to start by just acknowledging what happened in Monterey Park this weekend. In particular, several months ago, Assemblyman Mike Fong spoke with our office about adding Chinese language to our work, and he actually represents Monterey Park, so I wanted to give thoughts to that. There is also a vigil at the state capitol today at 2:30, if potentially we're done by then. You know, as my husband and I were celebrating the Year of the Rabbit Saturday night in San Francisco's Chinatown, and during this weekend and this part of the time of the year is very important to the Asian community, Asian American community, and the Lunar New Year is a time of celebration. And when I think about Saturday night and us being in Chinatown, and just as easily could have been our location for this gun violence, I just wanted to in particular reference Assemblyman Fong and his connection to us and our work in diversifying our language capabilities and our outreach with the community, and just take a moment to think about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Risa. I think that's very appropriate. Maybe right now, what we could do is have just a moment or two of silence in memory of those people that passed away in that horrible massacre. Thank you. Does any board member have any other comments they'd like to share? You're all being so quiet today. My goodness. Okay, if that's the case, let's move. Did you have?
Good morning, everyone. Oh, there I am. Can't silence this voice. I just really wanted to say Happy New Year to everyone, and it's good to see everybody's face, and hopefully things are, for the new year, have started out good. We have a lot of work to do this year, so, you know, hopefully everybody's fresh and renewed and not running around like a chicken with a head cut off like I am, as usual. But it's good to see everyone, and Happy New Year.
All right. If there are no more comments, let's move to our fourth item on the agenda, and that is we have someone from DCA, Yvonne Durantes. You're going to make a presentation to the board. We welcome you today.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year to everyone, and so thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide a Department of Consumer Affairs update here today. My name is Yvonne Durantes, and so this year we have some new DCA staff. The governor announced several appointed leaders this past December, November, and so DCA's Board and Bureau Relations team this fall now has included Melissa Gear, who is now serving as DCA's new Deputy Director, and myself serving as the new Assistant Deputy Director. And so we are also pleased to announce the appointment of Kathleen Nichols as the Chief of Division of Investigation, and she was sworn in on December 5th. And Ms. Nichols has extensive law enforcement experience with over 26 years of investigating and supervisory experience. And the department has begun to fill the deputy chief position in the Health Quality Investigation Unit as well. The DCA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee. And so the department established the first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee, also known as DEI, to guide the department's equity strategy, initiatives, and action plans. The DEI committee held its official kickoff meeting on November 9th, and it will be holding its second meeting later this month. I believe it's next week, next Friday. Additional resources will be forthcoming that boards will be able to use and incorporate into their strategic plans, recruitment, processes, et cetera. And the committee will concentrate on the following three areas. Number one, workforce, to keep and find diverse talent. Number two, workplace, to actively educate leaders and employees to raise awareness and foster an inclusive culture. And number three, marketplace, to be sensitive to the diverse backgrounds and perspectives of consumers, applicants, and licensees. And if there are any questions in regard to DEI, I'm happy to answer any, and you know, we always welcome any questions as well at our member relations email as well. Strategic planning, to more effectively advance equity, drive outcomes, and increase opportunity for all. Strategic plans for July of 2023 and beyond must be developed or updated in accordance with Governor Gavin Newsom's executive order. DCA is revising its strategic planning process to include more inclusive public engagement, data analysis, and the incorporation of diversity, equity, and inclusion into strategic planning as well. The DEI committee will provide input to the strategic planning process in the coming months, and DCA will begin implementing the revised process and working with boards on updating existing strategic plans or developing new ones by March of 2023. New strategic plan and logo. DCA released its new strategic plan in November and officially transitioned to a new logo beginning January 3rd of 2023. The new logo will be implemented gradually throughout the year of 2023, and existing items with previous DCA logo are still valid during the transition and do not need to be replaced or updated. DCA board and bureau leadership have been given information and resources to help with the new logo's implementation. The centralized website is also at www.dca.ca.gov/logo. The new plan and logo represent the department's new chapter and future, with consumer protection continuing to guide our mission and priorities. DCA holds itself to high standard as a licensing entity, regulator, and educator and service provider. Additionally, the plan incorporates our strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as our shared commitment to each other and every consumer in California. The new logo not only displays our state's official colors, but it also visually represents the DCA vision, together protecting California's consumer. The shield symbolizes DCA's strong and long-standing protection mandate. The state symbolizes all 40 million Californians DCA has pledged and is honored to serve. And the star symbolizes consumer protection as DCA's true guiding principle, its own North Star. If you have any questions, please contact Melissa Gear, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations. In regard to board member travel, so as travel resumes, please keep in mind that all state travel arrangements must be made through DCA's authorized travel agency, Cal Travel Store or Concur. When traveling by air on official state business, all board members and staff must use the most economic fares possible. Typically, this is Southwest Wanna Get Away option. However, if the flight is changed, there may be additional charges. Flight changes for personal convenience are not permitted or justified, and the traveler is responsible for any associated charges. Please contact BBR if you have any travel questions. Required board member trainings reminder. So now is the time to go over any necessary board member trainings and submit your certificates of completion to your executive officer and DCA member relations at dca.ca.gov. Board members must complete board member orientation training, or BMONT, within the first year of appointment or reappointment, ethics training within 6 months of appointment, and every 2 years thereafter. Sexual harassment prevention within the first year and every 2 years thereafter, and defensive driver training within the first year and every 4 years. For your convenience, these trainings are offered multiple times a year and in a variety of formats. For more information, a mandatory trainings page has been created to help members identify, access, and track specified trainings. The page includes direct links to mandatory trainings as well as pertinent information and policies specific to these training courses. The page is available via the DCA Board Member Resource Center under the Required Board Member Training tab on the DCA website. You can also reach out to Melissa Gear or myself. The President's Training, February 22nd of 2023, invites all presidents and vice presidents to our President's Training from 10 a.m. to noon. This is a virtual 2-hour training which will outline the role of a board president, including the understanding the scope of the role, managing board members, and performing administrative duties. And more information will be available soon. The state of emergency for COVID-19 and associated executive orders N3920 and N7520 will end on February 28th of 2023. Upon the state of emergency ending, active waivers that were issued under the authority of the state of emergency and executive orders will also expire. Thank you for your dedicated service throughout the pandemic, and if you have any questions, please reach out. Board members and committee members are required to file the Statement of Economic Interest, which is also known as Form 700, by March 15th of 2023, or within 30 days of their appointment, annually and within 30 days of leaving office. This year's annual filing period covers the prior calendar year, January 1st, 2022 through December 31st of 2022. The deadline for filing is Friday, April 1st. To ensure compliance, DCA requests that Form 700 filers complete the e-filing by Friday, March 15th. You should have recently received an email from NetFile with instructions on how to file your annual Form 700. And if you have any questions or would like additional information, please contact Melissa Gear. The board member orientation training will be held on March 22nd of 2023, and board members must complete BMONT within 1 year of appointment or reappointment. On March 22nd, BMONT will be offered as a live virtual day of training and possibly in person on June 20th and October 10th. More information will be available soon, and members can sign up using our DCA's Learning Management System, also known as LMS. Thank you all. Thank you for this opportunity to provide any questions, and so we look forward to working with you all.
And the board thanks you for coming in and giving us the information today. Thanks, Yvonne. All right, let's move on to something very important here. It's January, and this is our time of year where we elect new officers for the board. So I would like to take this opportunity to nominate Callie May for board president.
Thank you, Steve. I accept your nomination.
And we would need a second to
Second.
Everybody jump in, unanimous second. Okay. Should we vote this before we vote totally?
So we'll do public comment on each motion. We'll take them separately for each officer.
Okay. So at this point, we'll open up for public comment on Callie May as board president.
I think we'll do in-person first and then online.
Can we open up the public comments online then?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone online would like to comment on the officer's nomination, you may look for the question mark icon, typically at the lower right of the WebEx screen, or behind the 3-dot other options if you're on a mobile device. If you have any call-in users, they may press *3 to raise their hand, and any WebEx attendee on a full computer can also raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Please do.
Thank you.
And the public comments have been closed, so now we vote the resolution. So,
Thank you.
call the roll.
Steve Weeks,
Yes.
Callie May,
Yes.
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Kelly Funk,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Colette Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Danielle Munoz,
Yes.
Jacob Rosofsky.
Yes.
Congratulations, Madam President.
Thank you.
And now it's time to move on to Vice President, and I would like to recommend to the board that Tanya take that position. Do we have a second for that?
I second.
You accept?
Yes.
Bit of a surprise, but that's.
That was a big surprise, Steve.
Okay, that's okay. All right, then now we will open this up for public comment. So, any, in the in-person public comment first? Doesn't look like we have any, so let's go to online comments.
And this is the moderator. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to comment on the vice president nomination, you may look for the raise hand icon and click that, or you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in that text box and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. And I do not see any request for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Please do.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, can we call the roll for a vote for vice president?
Steve Weeks,
Yes.
Callie Mae Pham,
Yes?
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Kelly Funk,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Colette Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Danielle Munoz,
Yes.
Jacob Rosofsky.
Yes.
All right, so we have a new president and we have a new vice president. Wow. You don't lose any time in making that change. I'm suddenly a backbencher here. Okay, this is the time now that I will turn over the gavel to our new president, wish her well, and here we go. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to thank Steve for your exemplary leadership these past 2 years, and thank you to the board for putting their trust in me to lead. It is truly a privilege to get to learn from, collaborate with such a diverse, dedicated, and passionate board, staff, and community of licensees. I look forward to continuing our work together to ensure the safety of California consumers while recognizing the skill and innovation of our licensees. Thank you. So with that, and welcome, Tanya, we're in this together. All right. So with that, let's move to agenda item number 6, appointment of board members to standing committees for 2023. So in our agenda packet for item number 6 is a listing and description of each of our committees. We've also been provided with a current, have we? A current list of who is on each of the committees? Okay, great. I will open it up to comments from board members on what committees they would like to serve on. For our new members, if you haven't joined a committee already, it is our board practice to be on more than one. But everyone will be on DRC, just so you know, and then we do have a different board member chair each committee. You can only chair one committee, but you can serve on multiple committee. So with that, let's start with the disciplinary review committee. Everybody's on it. Great. So let's move on from that.
Just a quick note on DRC for our newer members. We do ask everybody to serve. We only have 3 serve at a time on those committees. But we're pretty caught up in DRC, but there's been times in the past where we've had to actually hold hearings every single month for multiple days. So it's nice that we have at least everyone appointed to that committee so that we can be flexible. You know, maybe you can only make one day and that we can get somebody else to cover the other days. So it's super flexible, but that's why we ask everybody to be on it. We don't have everyone come at once.
Thank you for that clarification, Christy, so that everyone doesn't get scared. All right, let's move on to the Education and Outreach Committee. So far, for the last year, we had Tanya, Megan, Reese, and Yolanda. Is there anybody who wants off the committee who was on it before or would like to change?
I'd like to be on it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so we have an additional member for the Education and Outreach Committee. Any other changes regarding this committee? That's from, wonderful. Okay, so we're adding Colette, and if anyone else is, Okay, if there's no other comments regarding this committee, right, let's move on to enforcement and inspection. So this past year, Danielle has been chair, along with Tanya, Kelly, and Steve. Do we have any changes regarding this committee?
Not for me, no changes. I look forward to working on enforcement and inspections. Being an industry member, I feel like this is where I can really help. So I look forward to lending my voice in this committee. All in.
All right, thank you, Kelly, for that enthusiastic recommitment. All right, anyone else is there anyone who would like to join this committee who was not before?
I would like to join the committee.
All right, thank you so much, Jacob. Okay, any other board members? Okay. All right, if nothing else from that committee, we will move on to Health and Safety Advisory Committee. I am the current chair, along with Kelly, Reese, and Danielle. I would like to remain on this committee. Do we have any other changes? Anybody who would like to change or add to this committee?
If possible, I'd like to take myself off of this one if there's enough participation so I can focus time and effort on the other two. But if you need me, I would. So I'd like to be a backup option.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we do have already 3 other members, so if you would like to focus somewhere else, that's totally fine.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to add to the Health and Safety Committee? Okay, I don't see any.
And just a quick note on the Health and Safety Committee, just for everyone's sake. That is a committee that we bring in representatives from outside of the board. So it's board members, but we also actually have a licensee from every category on that committee that are not board members, and we have other industry representatives that serve on that committee as well. So that's actually a pretty big committee.
Thank you, Chrissy. So anybody want to hop on to Health Advisory? It's a good time. All right. Okay, if not, let's move on to Legislative and Budget. The current committee is Reese as chair, along with Megan and myself. Is there anyone who'd like to join this committee or go?
I would.
Oh, thank you, Colette. Okay, any other additions or changes? Nope. Okay, so we're adding Colette. And finally, licensing and examination. It looks like, do we have a current chair? We probably need to elect one at the next meeting. Got it. All right, so our current members are Tanya, Yolanda, and Steve on this committee. Would anyone else like to join, or?
I'll join.
Okay, thank you, Jacob.
I'll join as well.
Oh, great. Oh, Colette, great. Okay, wonderful. So we're adding Jacob and Colette to this committee. Is there anyone else who would like to make any changes to this committee, add or remove themselves? Nope.
Is this the point where we nominate a chairperson? Oh.
No, I believe it's at the meeting.
I see that.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay, I believe those are all the committees. Do we need to take public comment, or can we move on? No. Okay, so we do not need to take public comment on this agenda item. And just a reminder for the public, the committees, they review issues in more depth than what we're able to do during the board meetings, and they make recommendations to the board, but all final decisions are discussed here at the board level. Okay, thank you. So let's move on to agenda item number 7, review and possible approval of the 2023 board member guidelines and procedurals manual. Chrissy, is there anything you'd like to share about this item?
Sure. So this is our board member guidelines and procedures that you all get when you're appointed. And we actually bring it back to the board every January and have you just adopt it. There have only been minimal changes in this. We obviously had to remove Marcine's name from it. We're still sad about that. But we've added Natalie, and we have just made some staffing changes, names in there. We've added, we did some technical word cleanup on it, added in some travel information, and that's it. So no substantive changes to anything in here, just stuff that changes every year that we update for you.
I have a comment. On page 5, under section 7312, number 6, we've recently added Chinese. Should we add Chinese into that language there? Item 7312, Powers and Duties of the Board. Number 6, we offer and make available all written materials provided to licensees and applicants in English, Korean, Spanish, and Vietnamese.
Did you say page 5?
It's this. Yeah.
Oh. We're
Page 5 of the board. This booklet, right?
Oh, that's our laws and regulations.
This is not the same?
No, this is our manual that's part of the packet.
This?
That's,
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Okay, sorry, thank you.
however, noted.
So again, the document being referenced is behind tab 7 in your agenda. It's specific to board members, okay? All right, is everybody turned to the document? And, okay, and again, so this is a reiteration of past policies, some name changes, but otherwise is similar to what we've had in the past. Does anyone have any comments about it?
I have a question just based off of the presentation that we just had. So there was talk about DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I don't know if that, since that's going to be implemented in strategic planning and seems to be a big focus of DCA, I don't know, maybe to have, if it's not too much work, one line about like, you know, adopting similar strategies and practices of DE&I. And I just figured since it's was mentioned, so.
Thank you, Jacob. Christy, with that, are we at a place where we can incorporate changes into this document? Yes.
I would probably recommend, if legal agrees, that we make those changes and maybe bring it back for final vote at our next meeting.
If that's the case, do we have any other suggestions for changes we'd like to see to this document? Right. I'm not seeing any other comments or questions from the board. So with that, since we want to see the final language before we make a motion, guess we table this until a future meeting. Okay, thank you, Christy. So if we're not taking action on item number 7, let's move on to number 8, discussion and possible approval of the October 24th, 2022 board meeting minutes. I want to start with whether we have any comments from members to changes to these minutes. Okay, I'm looking to my left, nothing, okay. I'm going to look to my right now. I don't see any members raising their hand. Okay, if we don't have any comments from members, can I have a motion to approve our minutes from the October 24th, 2022 meeting?
So moved.
Okay, and do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Steve moves and Kelly seconds. Let's take public comment before we vote. Any public comment here in person? Okay, I don't see anybody, okay, coming up to comment. All right, can we open public comment online?
Certainly. This is the moderator, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you have a comment on the minutes, you can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right of your WebEx screen. Type the word comment into that text box and click send. The other option is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. And we do not have any call-in users at the moment. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. Are there any comments? I do not see any request for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Thank you, moderator. Please do.
Thank you.
So with that, let's take a roll call vote.
Callie Mae Pham,
Yes?
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Kelly Funk,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Colette Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Danielle Munoz,
Yes.
Jacob Rostovsky,
Yes.
Steve Weeks.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. With that, the motion passes to adopt the board meeting minutes. Let's move on to item number 9, Executive Management Report. Christy, take it away.
All right, good morning. I did want to make one comment before I started on my report to congratulate our new board president, not only for becoming board president, but also because she was just reappointed by Speaker Rendon. So congratulations on that, and you're stuck with us for a few more years.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Steve.
Oh,
Walked out. No. We'll go ahead and get started on your agenda item packets. We will start with our administration and operations report. We are almost fully staffed at our board, which is like, we're so thankful. We do have a full management team now. We have two new licensing managers. We have Savannah Hughes, who just recently joined us. That's for our reports person. Our reports analyst is Savannah Hughes, and we have, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself in licensing. I was so excited we were fully staffed. Patricia Garcia, who many of you have worked with in the past, did retire in December, so we're currently looking to fill her position. She was our budget analyst. We did a career outreach with Sac State University. Thank you so much, Danielle, for connecting us with a group at Sac State where we actually did a presentation with them on trying, the whole goal to try to get more people to apply for jobs with the state. It's gone so well, we've actually connected them with the Department of Consumer Affairs because we didn't want to be stingy and take it all to ourselves. So they were super helpful as well. So and I think we have another session planned with them already, so super exciting. Thank you so much for that tip. We're working on new fleet orders. That's our vehicles that we use for our inspectors. We have some new cars coming in and some really old cars going out. And then we did just finish, as you all know, we finished our strategic plan, but we also just finished our action plan. So at our next board meeting, we'll be able to start updating the board on each one of our objectives because we have, DCA helped us with developing an actual timed action plan for everything that we have to do to complete our strategic plan. So you'll start seeing that at our next board meeting. And then with our update here, we have our budget. Again, we're still a healthy budget, so we don't have to spend a lot of time working with our DCA budget office because we're one of the luckier ones. But we have our budget expenditures and we have our fund condition. Any questions on admin operations before we go on to licensing? All right, so next we have our licensing and exams and disciplinary review committee report. That's where we have our new managers. We have Jasmine Shaw, who started as our new licensing manager. So we now have 2 licensing managers with our Alex, who's in our audience today, as our chief of our licensing and operations unit. We have a new associate government program analyst, so that's kind of a person who serves as our lead of our licensing team. And then, unfortunately, it's always a revolving door, so we're sad that we're losing one of our analysts in our licensing unit, but we will be recruiting to fill that as well. And then we're still looking to recruit for some additional positions, mostly to help out with all those emails that we receive. However, you'll see in our last paragraph there that we do have very good news. We have been able to completely catch up on those emails. It was not easy. We had to stop work. Basically, we use the holidays to our advantage because it does get a little bit slower. Not a lot, because we don't really have a graduation period in cosmetology and barbering. They're graduating all the time, but it does get a little slower in the holidays. So we were basically having email Fridays where everybody was answering emails. We've got it very caught up. We have a process in place where we're maintaining, but again, those numbers are the applications are gonna start coming back up. So we're hoping to get those new positions filled to address those emails that are coming in. But everybody seems to be really happy. They're getting responses usually within 24 hours. And then we had some town hall meetings since our last meeting. We had a town hall meeting that was kind of directed to schools and to students because we received so many deficient applications. So we did a town hall meeting where we actually went over the online process. What people seem to miss is a certain button that you have to hit to attach your proof of training, and it just gets missed. You upload it, and it looks like it's uploaded, but you have to hit that attach button. And because they miss that button, it causes a deficiency letter to go out, and then it causes a proof of training to be sent separately, so it increases the workload for everyone. And it does seem to have helped. We've also established our own email address just for schools to send proof of trainings to, so that we can streamline that process. And then we also had a Barber Town Hall meeting to talk about examination content. We had PSI representatives come into this room, and we did it a virtual and in-person meeting where they went over the actual content. Barbers are the ones that we've been seeing struggle the most with the newer exam. And so we had them come in, and they did a great overview and answered questions. Mostly it was all the schools were invited. We had about 100 people who showed up. Mostly instructors, and we went over the content of the exam, or PSI went over the content of the exam, and I think it seems to help. You'll see in the numbers are starting to go in the right direction. We are doing that with cosmetology next. In the first week of February, we'll be having another town hall with PSI to do a cosmetology exam overview. And we did these in the beginning as well, so these are just in addition to get people to kind of remember what the content is and what's being tested in the exam. All right, so we're going to...
I'm sorry, can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
With the 100 barbers that attended that were instructors, what was percentage-wise of the schools that we have for barbering?
We have no idea.
Okay.
So we do not approve schools by what they teach. We have it in our, they're approved to teach either or, but so there's a lot of cosmetology schools that offer barber programs. The barber schools also are offering cosmetology programs. So the invite was sent out to all schools. So who actually attended, we're not positive.
Okay, thank you.
Chrissy, I have a silly question about the button. So is the button like a really tiny button, or like, so it's a very obvious button? Okay.
It is. We think that the reason is because you upload it first.
Oh.
Then you have to hit attach.
Oh, yeah, it's one of those where you think
Yes.
it's uploaded, but it's not uploaded.
They definitely think they've uploaded it because
Okay.
people think they have uploaded it, and
Okay.
they have uploaded it. They just didn't attach, and it's a departmental-wide issue but. Yeah, so every time I've spoken at several schools recently, and I tell them, if there's one thing you get from me when I leave is attach button.
Yeah.
Hit that attach button.
Well, I think it's good for the board to know that too, because if someone is like, hey,
Yep.
blah, 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 we're like, don't forget, make sure you press
Yes.
the upload button. So I think it's a
Yes.
good problem to know.
Yes. All right, moving on to the statistics. You have our quarterly applications received. We're definitely getting back to pre-COVID times, so our volume's just growing all the time. The next page, we're on page 7 of 25, you'll see our current examination pass rates. We do have Sean Condor here from PSI, right, back there, and we also have a couple PSI people who are online virtually if any of the board members do have questions. But what we wanted to do, we changed up the stats a little bit on this, and we'll also are working on this with our licensing and examination committee, so they have taken this issue up as well. They don't have a recommendation to the board today, but there is more information in that discussion. But we did want to add, the right column is our Q1 pass rates. Normally we wouldn't have that on there, but we wanted you to be able to see the difference between Q1 and Q2. Q1 was when we the first time we implemented the new exam. So we anticipated those rates going lower. And then you can see in Q2 that they are, in most categories, coming back up.
And in this case, would we also be adding Chinese after March?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so on the next page, again, we break down, as you all know, our pass-fail rates to lots of different categories. So our next sheet on page 8 is showing the difference between the apprentice program, the out-of-country program, and the school program. So, of course, we've talked about the apprentice situation, but we're happy to see that they are slowly getting better on some of their pass rates. And then, of course, the school programs are growing as well. We had a little bump in electrology, which is kind of surprising, so we're not really sure why. Actually, we'll probably look deeper into that and see what's going on. And then the next one is just additional data of how we break it out. But again, we're showing you that Q1 pass rate compared to Q2 on the changes that have been, the improvements that have been happening. Any questions on any of that? Okay. And then you see our licenses issued. We issued more licenses in our second quarter, which was a little surprising since we're caught up on emails, but we're happy about that. And a world of difference when you have a full staff.
Christy, I'm sorry, I do have a question. The pass-fail rates, I think we talked about this in the committee, but this also includes multiple testing, like if they've taken it multiple times. Is there a way to find out on the retake side how many times these people are retaking the test? You know, that's a concern of mine.
Yes.
Because I know that it's happening quite a bit where people are taking the written exam 2 and 3 times and still not passing. So I'm looking at these numbers at, you know, even if we do have a pretty even pass rate from Q1 to Q2, how many of this Q2 are retakes, several retakes?
Yep. We can do that.
Okay.
I receive that weekly, so we do look at that, but we can incorporate that into this report as well.
I think that's important just because in general, if we're going to analyze the pass rate overall, where are these people struggling at and how many times are they actually taking it before they pass?
Right.
Is an indication of this Q2, and then next we're going into Q3. Will kind of make a little bit more sense to see where that pass-fail rate actually lies,
right,
whether it's the first time or more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so on page 12, we have our full population, 625,000 plus. And then we go into our disciplinary review committee. Right now, we have a total 343 pending appeals. That might sound like a big number, but for members who have been around, that's a great number. It used to be hundreds and hundreds, and it was rough. So this is actually right where we want to be. I will take a minute for some of our members who have been around a while and been serving on our DRC. We do have a little bit of sad news to report that Vlad will be leaving us. Vlad's been with us for a very, very long time, but he's moving on to greater, he thinks what's going to be greater, but it's not. But Vlad obviously has been a big part of DRC and working, he's our lead of our DRC program, and so he will be sorely missed.
He will be sorely missed. He did a great job of backing up and getting the information not only to the people that were involved in the appeals, but also to our board members that served on DRC. So those are tough shoes to fill.
Those are very tough shoes to fill. And
we have a DRC next week. Will he be there?
Well.
Okay, great.
He'll be his swan song. He will, and he actually is starting his new job elsewhere, and it's a good move for him. We're very happy for him, but it's hard to be happy for someone when you're, gutted by it.
Is his new job representing appellants in DRC appeals?
Hopefully not.
Okay.
If it is, he hasn't told me.
Good, as long as it's not that.
All right, so that is our licensing and DRC report. Moving on to our enforcement, inspections, and cite and fine report. We are fully staffed in our management team on this unit. We have Denise Murata, who's our new enforcement manager. She came to us from the Board of Accountancy. And then Cassandra Hunter, who has worked with us for several years within our enforcement unit, was promoted to a manager. So super happy to have them on board. It's not been too long since that they've been on board, but they are working very hard. Lots of improvements we're trying to make in our enforcement unit. We do have a new inspector down in our Los Angeles area, and of course still have quite a few vacant inspector positions that we constantly are trying to fill. And then we're still working on trying to get special investigator positions. That those would be positions that are at a little bit of a higher level than than our inspectors, so they would handle a case more thoroughly. They would interview consumers, they would interview the licensees, and they would also do the inspections. It's a long process because that has to go to CalHR for approval, so it's a extensive approval process. I just checked base with our DCA's office last week, and they're close to submitting that over to CalHR, so hopefully we're hearing from those soon. Could make a really big change in our enforcement processes.
Are you expecting assuming that happens, are you expecting to melt a lot of our existing inspectors into that upward position?
No, I don't know which of our current staff would qualify. So you would still have to qualify for those positions. So it would just depend on what they have in their past. Okay, so we have our enforcement statistics. We've added our extern, a little chart for our externs, so you can see how the extern program is growing. That's something that the board is working on regulations on that will be coming back around. We want to get a little more oversight of that extern program. Our complaint intake, complaints were actually down a little bit in the holiday season. And then on page 18, we show you our tables of kind of an overview of where those complaints are coming from. As usual, our highest number of complaints are health and safety complaints that we receive. And then the next chart shows you our workload. So it shows you how many complaints have been received, how many have been referred to DFI, which is our Division of Investigation, and what we've closed, and then what we have pending in our average days to close. We also have our application investigations, what we've referred to the Attorney General's office, and then any that have what our disciplinary process has been after the Attorney General's. The next page is our disciplinary outcomes. So that shows you where each of those cases that have gone through the full disciplinary process have ended up. So in our last quarter, we had 1 revocation. We had 2 that surrendered their licenses. So that just kind of shows that final outcome of what those disciplinary decisions are. Our current probation statistics, and then our cite and fine statistics. So it shows you how many citations have been issued to each of our categories. The next page shows the number of inspections that we've conducted. We show the number of inspections with violations as well as the inspections without violations. So when an inspector's gone in and they don't see any violations. And then our total inspection data for out of business or closed on call. Closed on call is if our inspector shows up and the business is closed. Those have been a lot more frequent, especially up in the north, not as much in the south, but in the north. Smaller shops tend to be up in the north, and since COVID, you're seeing less and less people still in the salons, and sometimes they're going to close if they don't have clients coming in. So you're seeing more closed on calls. Establishments inspections reports issued. So that's how many times our inspectors actually wrote an inspection report for an establishment. And then we have, again, our citations issued for each month. That shows our citations are running about 42-day turnaround time right now, which is, we try to keep it at 45, so we're about average for that. And then on our next page is our request for payment notice. We have finally filled a position for that, so we have a dedicated staff person that's going to be handling this, which is great because a lot of times it's Carrie sitting next to my left who has to do a lot of that, and then a lot of our Cite and Find staff have to be pulled off their duties to help with these payment notices. So we have a dedicated person, just started 2 weeks ago maybe at the max, so we're super happy about that. And this is our request for payment notices, the number that have been sent out the first, second, and third time. And then we have our payment plans, and we've added the percent of the success rate on our payments, which is 44%. Takes about an average of 328 days for those fines to be paid in full. And then we also added our average amount of fine that people are asking for payment plans. It has to be a minimum of $500. Anything 500 and over 500 is you can ask for a payment plan. Any questions on that? All right, moving on to our outreach update. We've kind of talked a little bit about this already, but we had our barber town hall, and we are getting ready to do our cosmetology town hall in February. We have some new publications we created, and we handed those out to you today. They're part of our agenda packet as well, but we wanted to show you the actual handout, and that is how to, what to know before choosing a school. So we thought, you know, we're trying to increase our information to students on the best way to choose a good school to go to. We are actually doing an outreach event in April with a local high school. So we'll be using those outreach pamphlets to provide to high school students that are just thinking about what they want to do, and maybe they want to go to cosmetology or barbering school. Thank you.
I have a question about the pamphlets.
Yes.
Are these like anyone can like go online and order a bunch of them, or like how can normal like average Joes get these? Be like, hey, I want to put these in my high school, or I want to put these in my, you know.
We if a high school contacted us and wanted them, we would probably send them some.
Okay.
We have a supply in our office. They are online to be downloaded, but they don't look as nice as, you know, folded. So it's the first time we've done it. So I think if we have some interest from any high schools, we would love to send them out.
Awesome.
Chrissy, what languages do we have the printed ones in?
I think right now only English, but we will get, we're actually looking to translate all of our, well, we have all of our information in Vietnamese and Spanish, and then we're also looking to we're working on translating our additional information into Chinese.
Thank you.
Christy, I have a quick question. Years ago, they had the ROP program in high school. Do they still have that?
And not as common as it used to be, but there are still some school districts that have it, and they do a great job.
Yeah, get them in early. So this is a great substitution if they don't do that anymore.
Yes.
So thank you.
And just the sound comes from above me, and I can't like tell where people are. So, okay, so we've updated our reinstatement information online. That is something that we've talked about in the past. We've added it. A frequently asked questions page. We also have recently updated the human trafficking notice that is required to be in establishments. Is that right? So that is something that just became effective January 1, 2023. We've been working on sending out email blasts. So we've done 3 email blasts since our last meeting. And let's see, we've done some information to interested parties on our personal service permit. We have videos now on our personal service permit that we have posted. And then we're, of course, going to continue with our email blast, and we'll be talking a little bit later about another option for reaching more of our licensees. And then we've listed our future outreach events. February 6th is our cosmetology town hall meeting. April 2nd and to 3rd, we will be at Premier Anaheim. This used to be the ISSE show in Long Beach. It is now being held by Premier, which holds big shows throughout the country, and now they'll be in California, and they've invited us to attend that as well. And then also, excuse me, in May, we will do another Jazzy Beauty and Barber Show in Anaheim that is targeted to students. And that'll be the third one of theirs that we've attended. They get pretty good attendance there from barbering and cosmetology students. And then we're also going to be looking into Facebook Live. And that, excuse me, that is, we have another Board of Behavioral Sciences actually does Facebook Live events. And we're going to steal that idea from them. So we're going to be meeting with them on kind of getting some tips on how they handle that and hopefully incorporate that into our outreach program as well.
Sorry, I have one more question. I have a lot of questions. For the outreach events, are these things that like we're allowed to attend?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I'm like, Anaheim, that's not too far. So.
Yes, we can coordinate that with you if you would like to attend.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
They're for, those trade shows are for licensees only. So like if you weren't part of the board, at least I think they're for licensees only, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
They're
So-
for license.
Okay.
It's so funny that I saw that in here because when they were advertising, I was like, wait, is this the same time as the Long Beach? So I found out when everybody else found out, and I'm an industry person that's been changed to Premier Anaheim.
Yes. It should be exciting. We're super excited.
Well, it's in a different place too, so hopefully just a change of atmosphere and arena will bring out more licensees to these
And it is
events.
right across the street from Disneyland.
It is so right across the street.
I mean,
And they have
like,
better
it's right
food over there too. But I'll be there. I'll
Okay.
be there.
All right. And then lastly, we have our SB 803 implementation plan. We've shrunk this down because we've told you about the stuff that we've implemented in several meetings. So this is just what has not been implemented yet. So the hairstylist license is very close. The examination is in the process of actually being translated. The items are being translated. We will then have the OPES, which is the Office of Professional Examination Services with DCA, will have some additional workshops to set the cut score for the grading and do the psychometric stuff that they do for our exams. But we are on track to implement that, is it July 1? July 1. Our pre-apprentice training, we are actually almost finished with our content for that, and then we'll be working to see how we can set that up online and how we go about getting it provided to apprentices and how we will track that entire process online. It'll be an online process. Our school curriculum, we just wanted to provide you that we have 216 schools that have new, that we received new courses applications on. 210 have been approved. We have a total of 253 schools. I think we actually just got a few more in. I think some schools, you know, were not going to change, but now they're looking at maybe changes. Some of those we had a couple community colleges that were still doing the full program, and I know I just recently got some applications in from them to shorten their programs. Our extern package, which is currently being worked on, our fines, which is going to the Health and Safety Committee for some additional information on that. That's where we needed to look at the fines and the risks associated with what we're fining. So that is the end, would be once we get that done, which is still a few months out, and then of course there's regulations, which is then still a year to two out, we will be done with implementing SB 803. And that's it, I'm done.
Thank you, Christy. Are there any other questions or comments from the board members? Okay, at this time, I would like to take public comment on this item, number 9, and the various executive management reports. Are there any members of the public here today who would like to comment on this agenda item? Okay, I don't see anyone. Moderator, can we open it for public comment online?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you would like to make a comment about the executive report, you can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right of your computer screen. Type the word comment into the text box and click send. The other option is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that concludes item number 9. At this time, I would like to ask the board if we could modify our agenda today to take agenda item number 18 now, the discussion and possible action regarding rulemaking proposals. Any objection to switching it up a little bit? Great, thank you. And Christy?
You know what, that's actually, I'm sorry, I made a mistake on notes. We actually want to take item 17.
17, okay.
Not 18.
All right, okay, well, I meant item 17. Is there any issue with taking item 17? Okay, I think everyone's okay with that. So Christy, item 17.
Thank you. So as most of you know, over the last couple of years, I was working with a group, the Council for State Governments, and I did a couple trips to Washington, D.C. To work on compact language for cosmetology. Originally it was cosmetology and barbering, but now it's going to be just for cosmetology because we found such differences in barbering across the country. So what compact licensing would do is allow somebody to, if a state is a participant of the compact, it would allow them to work in any other state that is a participant of the compact. And one of the best descriptions of that is your driver's license. If you have a driver's license in California, you can go to another state and you can drive with your California driver's license in those states. So this is compact language that was developed over a couple of years. It was funded, this process was funded by the Department of Defense, Department of Defense being especially supportive of this because of military families and the military spouses or even the military individuals themselves who may get stationed in different states. And if they happen to be cosmetologists, then they would be able to go to work right away if they were in a compact state. So there's lots of states that are compact states with other license categories. California is not one of them. I don't know that there's any other compact in, at least within the Department of Consumer Affairs. So this would be very new to California. How, you know, there's reasons for all of that to every different type of profession. But in our work groups that we've had, we have seen that cosmetology is pretty much cosmetology in each and every state, whereas nursing definitely has like some different nursing and physicians. They have different requirements. A lot of that goes to like background requirements, which is what we don't do. And no, most other states don't do any background requirements for cosmetologists as well. So what happens through this whole process is we developed with several other states and industry representatives model language that is included in your packet today. So one of the things that's interesting is in SB 803, we were provided endorsement, in a sense, reciprocity, where if you have a license in any other state, you can come to California and you can get your license and start working right away. So this is, we already have that. We already have what could be called universal licensing. We don't call it that, but it's very close to universal licensing. You can get all you have to do is have a license in another state, you get your license here in California. What the benefit, in my perspective, would do in compact licensing is it gives us access to enforcement information. So there is a database. We do not have a database for all licenses, so I can't go look up in a system somebody that's licensed in Kentucky. To participate in the compact, you become part of the database. What that does is if Kentucky has an open investigation on a licensee and they all of a sudden decide to come to California, we would know. We would know about that investigation. And that, to me, is a huge benefit for us. And one of the big benefits is I just had a conversation with North Carolina just on Friday. And we found a person who had come into North Carolina from Florida via California. So this person applied in Florida with a California certification and then is moving to North Carolina, and they thought something looked funny, so they called me, and come to find out this person has never been licensed in California. So we don't know how they got licensed in Florida. It must have been a fraudulent document. Fraudulent certifications are unfortunately very common in this industry. So luckily, if executive officers are talking, we are able to prevent a lot of that. I get calls from Kentucky a lot. The benefit to them is they have smaller populations than us. So they can, you know, with the amount of volume of applications, it's very hard for us to, not that it's hard for us to miss a fraudulent document, but it's definitely easier for them because they have such a lower volume than we do. So the compact to me is beneficial because of that enforcement aspect. So basically, if we're part of the compact and Kentucky's part of the compact, somebody from Kentucky can come here and go to work immediately. We can remove we can still take discipline, and we can take action against them if they do something wrong, then there's still a process that's been created in the model language. Now, where we are today is if the board agrees with going on a compact license, and I do have in the audience Leslie Rosti, who some of you know because she serves on our Health and Safety Advisory Committee, but she's been a big part of this compact as well, and is talking to lots of other states on this model legislation. If the board decides to support this effort, we would need to find an author in the legislature that would carry this bill, and then we'd need to support it through the legislative process, and potentially even the board could decide to actually sponsor a bill themselves and get this through the legislative process, should the board choose to do that today.
Christy, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Because I was reading this. You mentioned in the beginning how we have our reciprocity. When they apply for reciprocity, do they still have to take their written exam?
No.
Okay, so in this particular case, there would be no qualifications other than they have a license somewhere else, they go into a database, they apply here, we pull up the database to see before we say yes, or is it an automatic yes?
It's automatic. If we've agreed to the compact, then we've agreed that all the states are working together that are in the compact. So someone who's from one of those compact states would be able to go to work. They would basically have a multi-state license.
So with California having such a high requirement for our health and safety, how are we assuring that these people that are in the database understand what we require for our same health and safety for the consumer?
Well, right now, it's the same right now. Somebody can go, so someone who's licensed right now in Kentucky can come here, and we don't look at their education at all. They would just be granted a license. That's it. As long
so
as
how are we protecting the consumer in this aspect? And I guess this brings in the reciprocity along with this database. How are we actually protecting the consumer on the health and safety side if that's our main priority?
Well, you have to have had some sort of education in whatever state, and you have to have taken an exam. So, for instance, Florida, they don't test manicurists. So we don't allow manicurists to come from Florida into California. However, Kentucky does test manicurists. So if you're a licensed manicurist in Kentucky, you can get your license in California because it has to be equivalent.
So you're saying the reciprocity only exists if it's equal in the requirements?
Well, it's not we're not looking at the nitty-gritty of curriculum for any other state in any other situation. So we're not looking at, does Kentucky have 100 hours of chemical hair services comparable to ours? We don't look at any of that because the law says that they changed on 803. If you have a license, you get a license. Period.
I can see the bonus of this being transparent between states, but would they have to apply to our scope of practice parameters?
Yes. So they have to follow our laws and rules. So anybody in our state has to follow our laws and rules. And a good example is, to use the nurses, anybody who's a nurse in one compact state has to follow the exact same rules has to follow the actual state. So it's your responsibility to come into our state. Like, for instance, a cosmetologist can do everything that an esthetician can do. There are other states in the country that estheticians can do more than what we can do. Well, that just because you have a compact license, it does not allow you to do more than what our scope of practice allows you to do. So you have to be you have to follow whatever state's rules you are in. And the way the compact is written is that we looked at, the compact wasn't written to specify hours of education because it's so different among the states. So the groups purposely left those hours out. And it does state, though, that there has to be an education and there has to be an exam. Obviously, I think there's around 8 or 9 states now who no longer have practical exams. So we didn't get into that nitty-gritty. It's just that you had to take an exam to become licensed in your home state.
So when they apply, I have to think of this on two sides. So when they are in this compact and they apply for the license here, do we send them our state rules? Do they get the same thing that they would get as if they were a new licensee here? How do they know what information are they receiving to know what our rules and regulations are in California?
If they apply with us, they get that information.
No, I'm talking about from the compact. Like if they're a part of the compact, the state is part of the compact, and that person applies for a license here in California, we then send them information? What is that process?
No, because we wouldn't know. Is that correct, Leslie? We wouldn't know necessarily because we've agreed into the compact. So it puts the responsibility is with the licensee.
I have a question too. So when they come from another state with their license and they can get to work right away, right? That's what they're saying. And say someone goes in and does like an inspection on the establishment, they'll honor that license. Is it going to look different? What's that going to look like?
Yes, we would honor that license because our inspectors would then have to be trained to know who, what that looks like and what a multi-state license is. Mm-hmm. So if we walked in and we saw a New York license and New York's not part of the compact, then that's unlicensed activity because we wouldn't recognize New York.
Okay, so since someone comes from like Kentucky and then they violate some part of our code, right? Are we going back to their state to communicate with them on that, or do we have authorization to take action?
We do, and we would communicate with their whoever issued their license as well. And that's the benefit, is we would be able to work together with the other states to take action against a licensee.
Going back to your metaphor about driver's license, we have specific rules in California and local rules, and all drivers, whether they're from Virginia or Kentucky or whatever, have to follow the rules of our state when they're here. Is that the same with this compact?
Exactly.
My other question is, so a licensee comes here from another state, and we're just going to use Kentucky. As an establishment owner, how does the establishment owner, if that person comes in to say they want to work at my salon, as an establishment owner, how would I verify that, one, the license is valid, and two, that they are, okay to work in the state without getting a California license?
Do you want to come up? I'll have Leslie come up, because Leslie's worked a lot on the compact as well. They would be able to verify that.
Yeah, so a couple things.
You got to use your microphone. You push the button, push the button.
There we go. Hear me now? Okay. So a couple things, something that you were talking about, and I think it lends to this, is that database would allow for red flagging of any, so everybody would have a unique identifier. Every license that is part of the compact has a unique identifier that follows you. So you can see that there is potential to reduce some licensure fraud across the country, and potentially even some human trafficking if we have these unique identifiers. The other thing that is interesting about how the compact works is that everybody who's licensed in the state, regardless of whether they have a multi-state license or a single state California license, would they would be able to see that in the database. So Christy would be able to see if you had her staff would be able to see if you had someone who wanted to work for your establishment, if there are any red flags if that's been flagged in any state. It gives you total transparency to current investigations, which you currently don't get. If you ask for a certification letter, you may or may not, depending on the rules of the state where they're coming from, be able to know whether that person's under a current investigation. I think the other reason that, compacts have been around for a very long time. The nursing compact is the oldest one. It's 20 years old, and they anticipate having all 50 states, well, if they can get California, 49 states in the next 5 years. And so I would encourage you to think about if it can work for your driver's license and if it can work for nurses. Likely we can make it work for this occupation as well. But the way that it would work in your regard is that the state could flag it, and if somebody gets in trouble, they would be penalized here, however you penalize them, and then the only state that could take away their license is Kentucky. Now, you could say you can never come back here. You could ban them from working in California, but Kentucky in this scenario would be the only state that could take away their license, just like your driver's license. I mean, if you killed someone with your car in California, California can't take away your Kentucky driver's license. Only Kentucky can take away that driver's license.
But
So my question.
Oh, sorry. Just a real quick question. Sorry, Tanya. How often, though, do establishment owners actually look up? And this is my naivety. I can't say it. This is me being naive. There you go. If I'm Joe Schmo and I own an establishment, and then Tanya comes in from Kentucky and is like, I want to work here, and I can. Does that owner actually go and look up this person?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they look up the California license.
Okay.
I mean, I'm guessing the people who look up the California license would also look up the Kentucky license.
Okay, that's...
There's probably some people that don't look up anybody's.
Right.
Sure.
Okay, that was my question is is it actually being validated, by the average Joe?
And to respond to you, because I'm going to come back to your question, is that most legit establishment owners who have a reputation in the city, there's things that we don't want. We don't want complaints. We don't want someone who doesn't understand safety, sanitation and safety. So for me, even my stylists that have been with me, I pull their license up every year to make sure. Now, I've gotten a little lax because I'm on the board. So if their name didn't appear on the DRC, pretty much know their fines are paid. So that's an advantage that I have. But before this, I was active in pulling up their license. But my question to Leslie, Leslie, is as an establishment owner and someone, how is my access to this portal? Is it I have to call state board to find out about the license? I can go on Breeze, pull it. Is there a place that I actually can, okay, they have a license from Kentucky. Let me go into this, pull it up and see if I can hire this person or not.
So interesting question, and this would be a great reason for California to support the board to support it in the beginning, is that just like you guys make rules at the board and then there's legislation, laws and rules, when the first 7 states enact the compact, a commission will be stood up. That commission will have representation from each of those states. Those first states will make the rules around the compact. So things like that will be the rules part, not the law part. And so until there's 7 states, I can't answer that question. Those states would make that decision who can have access to that in their states. So, the first 7 states obviously will have a lot of power in making the rules around how the compact is enacted.
Can I ask a question also? there's a working group that's helped establish this, and Chrissy, I guess you've been on that, working on it for some time. Can you tell me the arguments that are being made by other states that may not want to participate in this contract?
We haven't had any arguments on the cosmetology compact. We had 11, 12 different states involved. We know 2 for sure already have bills that they've introduced with this language. This language just came out
January 3rd.
just in January. So, but I will say that some of the arguments from the California aspect of of non-cosmetology compacts is, this is the beginning of this compact, and so I know like nursing, for example, has been around for many, many years, and there's this, what do you call it? The group of people who run it?
NCSBN.
No, I'm sorry, the
commission.
The commission,
Yeah.
the commission is created in the beginning, and every participating state gets a seat on the commission. So it's almost like a big national board in a sense. But the commission, you know, California is huge. And so there's been the discussion that they're only 1 seat on those commissions. And when we're talking about like our nursing population is, you know, close to our board's population. And because California wasn't in on the development of that compact, so they didn't have a say in some of how those original regulations are being developed. So this would be a little different because California could be in at the beginning setting up those regulations with the commission. So we'd have a stronger seat. But again, some of the arguments is that each state gets 1 seat on that commission, and California, you know, we're bigger than some of the small states put together. So to have only 1 seat to make change is a little, makes us a little nervous because our population in all of our boards and bureaus is so big.
Has that been resolved?
We do not participate in any other compacts. If cosmetology were to be, if this board chooses to go forward with this, it would be a very big step in California.
Well, other states could also be very provincial as far as accepting people from our state.
That's the biggest argument I was going to say. It's the opposite, is that a lot of states who have more hours are hesitant to say, well, you guys, you know, it's California, and there is, you know, some issues that other states have with, you know, fraudulent licenses and 1,000 hours and that kind of thing. I think what we have to then remember and go back and rely upon is that everyone takes an exam, and, you know, there has to be some faith that we have in each other. I come from a state where people can get a driver's license when they're 15, and you can drive all over the country in places where you can't get a driver's license until you're 21, right? We have to have some faith that other states have done their due diligence to ensure that they don't want someone unsafe working in their own state, right? And so this is states coming together. I will say this, and this is the biggest selling point, I think, to a lot of cosmetologists in the industry, is that once there is a legislative bond between these states come together sort of like a little life raft, all these states, it makes deregulation of this industry of this state nearly impossible for cosmetology, because now you have made a legislative agreement with other states. It does help sort of shore up the licensure of this industry. It's an unintended consequence.
How many states would you expect to quickly join this compact?
We're hoping to have 9 this year. If we got 9 this year, the commission would stand up. 7 is the number to activate, so the commission would be stood up as we hit the 7th state. So
I think coming from again, on both sides of this, and understanding how a positive impact this could have, there's still that underlying issue of safety. Yes, everyone takes an exam, but if you have someone who, you know, hasn't practiced or when someone comes into my establishment to apply to work there's a checklist that I go through to even make sure they've been active in the last 2 or 3 years, right? So there kind of feels like, to me, on one hand, this loophole of knowledge that's going to be missing, and then where does that lie at for the establishment owner, and where does the liability the liability of bringing this type of licensee into an establishment.
I agree with that completely. But it also sounds like we have the most to lose from any state in this, because we're very...
Well, and also that's how it is today also, because when we give someone a license who's been licensed in Kentucky for, you know, their license may have been issued 25 years ago and they maybe haven't worked for 20 years, we give them a license.
It doesn't make us, here's what I would say. It's not going to make a substantive change to what you see in your state. Because right now, as it stands today, anyone can still come here and they just hand them another license. The only thing it changes is how long they have to wait to work. So if you make the assumption that 90% of people are doing the right thing, they're abiding by rules, they're abiding by safety, if you make that assumption that more people are good than bad, then people coming and getting right to work is beneficial to everyone in your state, particularly as we think about military families. You have a huge military presence here. So if they have to wait for the board to issue them a new license, nothing is different. The same people are still coming. They're just having to jump through a time hoop, not necessarily a scrutiny hoop, if that makes sense. And for California to get in on the ground floor of the initial commission to start helping make the rules around what you can see or how you go about finding that information out is a significant advantage to California. No way around it to say that the first 7 states that join are going to have the most power in determining how the future of how that compact is run.
Okay. I'm sorry. I have a couple questions and comments. What is the time frame around this? When is our decision needed, or is it needed? Can we not have a decision? Is there a time frame?
Well, if you want to, we have to enact legislation in order to make this happen. And so this meeting is being held at a time where we could do that. We could sponsor a bill. So that decision would need to be made today. Boards can go into the compact at any time. California could join the nursing compact today that's been in existence for years and years. But they wouldn't have had any say on how that the initial regulations were developed. And so that's kind of the difference in being in the very beginning is if California chooses to go in this direction, and again, we still would have to get it past the legislature.
So that brings me to my second question. Am I missing that we discussed this in the legislative committee? Because I don't think we did.
No, this language was just put out this month.
Right, but we could have had a meeting in January of the committee.
Well, that committee wouldn't talk about this bill until wouldn't talk about this language until it was a bill.
But if we're proposing to have a legislative movement, why wouldn't the committee discuss it?
Because the definition of the legislation committee is to recommend actions on bills.
But then we're, as a board, taking an action to request a bill be sponsored.
It would be the purview of the board, though, not that committee.
Okay, I'm not seeing the difference here. I don't know why we wouldn't discuss it in the committee.
In our definitions of our committees, that's not the purview of the committee.
Okay. But again, why wouldn't it be? Regardless of the definition of official, like it has to be a bill already kind of thing, why wouldn't we discuss it as a potential bill or a concept?
Sabina, if you look at the board member.
Yes, so I think we went over this rather recently when we kind of looked at all the board member manuals. So that committee is to recommend positions for the full board to take on bills. This language just occurred, you said January 3rd. Mm-hmm. There was no way to have a quick meeting and get everything done in time anyway, but there isn't a bill. So the board's purview is to also make a motion and decide if they want to pursue a legislative proposal. Not everything has to go through every committee either. So the timing of this was perfect for this meeting. And if you want to take action on this to join the compact, or even to direct staff to do a little bit more research and to bring it back to another board meeting, that's okay as well.
We could also take a motion to send it to committee for discussion.
But I think that the definition of your committee is so that it recommends positions on bills. Right now, this isn't a bill.
That's
Right,
not the
so
point.
I think the problem is the way, whenever many years ago, the committees were set up and the descriptions, the description of the legislation committee doesn't have us staff bringing legislative ideas to that committee. It only has
We have talked about potential ideas in the past. We also had a discussion at one point around if the committee would make resolutions, and we didn't move on any, but we had that discussion as a potential of something that the committee might do. I'm just asking why. I understand the exact language of our definition, and perhaps we need to change the definition. Right. But it just seems to me that this would be in the purview of having it at the committee discussion first, where we could go through a lot of these items before we would come to the board to ask for a potential bill. I don't understand why we wouldn't have done that.
Thank you, Reese. Your points are well taken. I think that's something we can address in the next committee meeting if there's a change in the definition. But my view of the committee is, again, the ultimate goal is to bring everything back to the board. And right now we're having a very thorough discussion with the board, which, again, is always the end goal in mind. And so I don't think that's an issue that we're already at this step. Having listened to everyone, it sounds to me like the decision to so we're discussing the point about whether we're okay with people from other states coming and being licensed here in California and some of the concerns with that. But I believe that decision has already been made for us with SB 803. So really we're not talking about, what can we do about people coming in from other states. They're coming, it's done. So it sounds like this is a vehicle to maybe get a little more control over that process. Again, transparency could be very helpful versus the fact, or compared to what we have now, which is nothing. So really, it sounds, again, the concerns are well taken. It just sounds like those are not things that we can change. We are already allowing out-of-state licenses to practice here. So the question is, what can we do to protect our consumers? And the only option at the right now sounds like participation in this compact could be a net positive, really. That's what I'm hearing. So I would be in support, and especially since sounds like it's a long process. It's not like we're making the decision today and tomorrow it's done. I think we're also going to have opportunities to revisit this. This is just a question of, are we going to get the ball rolling, and we can further vet this process. So I would be in favor of at least proceeding today on exploring this process. And again, in the end, we're going to have to look at it again and make a recommendation or a motion to actually approve the language. So this will not be the last time we have this discussion.
And I wanted to say that I think coming from both sides, that because of the confidence that we do have in Christy and the executive office, that it allows me, as not just an industry member, but knowing that if we do participate in this compact, that she is very confident of even my concerns. My concerns are raised because I'm an industry member. So for those of you who are not industry members, would not be something that you would probably, questions that you would probably ask or things that you would understand. Leslie, I appreciate you being here and answering those questions and further helping me understand the process a little bit more, because again, as an establishment owner, there are some things that when you're not an industry member, you don't really take into consideration. And Christy will get a good list of things from me with this. So I agree with Madam President over there that it is definitely a positive, but you definitely have to get those things out in this initial process to understand where we are going so that we don't get ourselves involved in something that is bigger than our why, and then we can't kind of scale back from it. So thank you again. And Christy, yes, I do appreciate all the effort that you have put into bringing this to us. These things are not easy, and I don't ever want your job, just so you know.
I second. Thank you very much for all the information.
Thank you.
One quick question. When the licensees are applying for their license, is it that either or, single state or multi-state, and does it cost more for them, multi-state?
Correct, and that's how the fees are handled, and that's how the compact pays for itself, basically. So let's say your single state license is $50, your multi-state license might be $100, so that $50 goes towards that multi-state option. If somebody in the multi-state compact chooses to move to another member state, so somebody's working in, we'll use Kentucky again, and they decide to move to California, then they would apply to the board for California to be their home state, and that they would have then a multi-state license issued in California.
Could we require that someone coming from out of state and compact at least review a hour-long or 2-hour-long video of our health and safety requirements for the state of California and make that contingent on them coming through? Is that possible, or is that?
We probably could. There are other states that have jurisprudence exams that are specific to our laws and regulations. It's definitely, I don't think it has to be part of this. It's something the board could do on its own, which I don't think is a bad idea, even if we weren't talking about the compact, but it would be something developed, almost a health and safety exam in a sense, but specifically to California's laws and regulations.
Well, and I think, Steve, to your point, and also to what I'm hearing is if we're part of this Course 7 and we're putting together the rules around the compact, that's something we can advocate for, that maybe the entire compact, puts towards their rules is no matter what state you go to, you have to watch the hour-long, state video, right? Because one state might want to focus more on something else, but we know here health and safety is important. So,
well, and there are other states. I think Minnesota has their own, regardless of what there are other states that, regardless of their reciprocity rules, require you to take something specific. Rather, it's an exam or a course. I'm not exactly sure, but that exists already. So that's something they're going to have to talk about anyways.
And what I will say is I've spent the last 15 years of my career in every state, all 50 states, trying to work with people like Christy. That's why I'm on your Health and Public Safety Committee, helping them revise rules so that rules start looking the same. When I started 15 years ago, there were products that were required in other states that were banned in California. That's a huge miss, right? A huge discrepancy. But in the last 15 years, we started to see that the rules, and for the most part, scope, has really started to be very standardized around the country. When I look at the top violations you guys have in California, it's the same in the other 49 states, right? So the rules around those, around infection control, health and public safety, are really very similar from state to state. So you can rest assured that if someone got a license in another state, that was not left out of their education or their exam. Yeah, I've made sure of it for the last 15 years. I've been living it, making sure of it. So
thank you for that, Leslie. Thank you for that piece right there.
And honestly, with all these really good questions, I'm confident we'd be a great representative to be one of the first, because we're asking all the right questions.
You are.
So we would be perfect for this, I would think. Yeah.
That's a perfect segue. Thank you, Danielle. So at this time, thank you for the thoughtful discussion, and thank you, Leslie, for sharing your information with us. At this time, I'd like to just, let's go ahead and get a temperature from the board and see, is there a motion? Is anyone willing to make a motion? And what would that text of that motion be? Because it says here, we just a motion to proceed with seeking a legislative change. So what would the actual
Well, there's a couple things that, and Sabina, correct me if I'm wrong, there are a couple things that the board could decide today. One, to just support the compact model language. And again, this language that's in your packet is the model language. It can't be changed. It's been developed. It is what it is. It's the regulations that get built after this. So we can support the language and leave it at that, or we can attempt to sponsor a bill on our own. Boards can sponsor their own bills and seek an author as a board to carry this legislation.
What would be the most, can I ask, what would be the most feasible route?
Or faster? I'm not really clear on which one.
I believe the faster route would be to pursue as a legislative proposal. That way you give the authority to your staff and your executive officer to go out and talk to some of the potential bill authors, see if there's support for that kind of, this compact out there in the legislature. And then obviously you're going to see it many times. Like I think you already said, this is not the last time you're going to see or hear of this. So then once it does, work its way through, you'll see model language come back. Obviously it'll probably be close to the, what it already is. If anything, little technical changes here and there maybe, but that would be your most efficient way should you decide to want to move forward with it.
I'm sorry, Sabina, just to clarify, so if we pursue the legislative process, would that be required either way if we're adopting the model language as it is, or if we're drafting our own?
Right. You're not going to, you're going to have to pursue it as a legislative proposal if you want it to be a law.
Okay.
So, either way.
So I think then the motion is to pursue a legislative proposal. Are any of our board members like to make that motion?
I motion to pursue a legislative proposal.
I second.
Okay, great. So we have Danielle moves, Tanya seconds. Let's take public comment on this item. Thank you so much for your patience. Looks like we do have public comment.
Hi there, Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. Having grown up at the back gate of Camp Pendleton and having more than 8,000 individuals in my Facebook group, if you will, we engage with military spouses all the time. And often when I speak with these spouses, I have not yet spoke with a gentleman about this, but all the ladies and folks that engage with us, they choose an aesthetic course because they can't get through a 1,600-hour program in the time that it takes for their MLS or their transfer orders from San Diego in the Navy, from San Diego in the Marine Corps to get back to the Carolinas, or they get deployed to Okinawa, or they get, they get thrown and tossed on a moment's notice. And I know Christy knows that I've already talked to her about all this. But if you do pursue legislation on this, we are hoping that you will try and make sure that you do include the estheticians in this, because obviously lash art is very popular around the country. It's also very popular in Japan and Okinawa, where people are learning how to do this and bringing it back. And they are doing it without licenses on the bases, outside the bases, around the bases. So bringing aesthetics into this will be very, very important, not only for the ease of the education of these women that have to pick up their families and move their kids into schools and move across country and out of country and back and forth. They don't know where their stuff is. We need to make sure that we do accommodate them as well eventually for the health and safety. Also because of the fact that the cosmetologists can do skincare and they have less education than we are, and they are allowed to take this license and go to Kentucky and do an Army base there, or go to New York and do an Army base, or Georgia, or wherever they're going. They're allowed to take their Cosmo less education in skincare and move around the country, but we are not. So from this perspective of a military spouse myself, this MLS is a complicated thing, and they often choose to take the aesthetics course because they can get through it faster. And if you've ever had to pack up and move your house and your 3 kids and go across the country, you'll know exactly what this is like. So I hope that you do consider making sure that the aesthetic program, since across the board, education is relatively the same, across the board, licensing for things like lashes and things like that is very common. I really hope that you do consider making sure that the estheticians are involved in this process as well.
Thank you for that. Next comment.
Madam President, members, Fred Jones on behalf of the Professional Beauty Federation of California. First of all, a lot of deference to Ms. Underwood in her participation. But there are some substantive concerns. Whenever you have a deal that's all or nothing, I get concerned. And this is 848 lines. This is a serious chunk of statutory language that we'd be asking our legislature to pass with no amendments. Have you met a legislator before? They don't like things like that. But just let me point out a couple of concerns. In lines 531, it gives the commission the authority to make an assessment on this board every year. It also gives the commission the authority to impose a, quote, to impose fees on licensees of member states. So that's interesting, what authority a commission that California will only be one voice, one state, one vote to. But on adverse action, that's, I'm a lawyer and I still can't figure out this. On line 287, it says that the, what do they call the satellite, no, not satellite, there's a home state and then there's the remote state. And it says the remote state can take adverse action against a licensee's authorization
30-second warning.
through the multi-state license, provided that, A, only the licensee's home state shall have the power to take adverse action against the multi-state license. So it's a direct contradiction. So there are some problems with this language. You're abrogating a lot of authority to a commission that you'll only be one vote for. Ultimately, I think it's moving toward national license. Maybe that's a conversation we should have. I don't know
That
if this
is
is
2 minutes.
premature. Okay. But 803 has largely made this all moot for people moving to California.
Thank you. Do we have any other in-person comments? I believe so.
Hello, I'm Laura Embleton. I'm the Government Relations Director for Associated Hair Professionals, Associated Nail Professionals, and Associated Skincare Professionals. Nice to see you all and nice to meet the new people. We are in favor of the compact. It's going to create better mobility. We do believe that with all the states have to have a disciplinary process in order to participate. And I want to make it clear that the compact licenses, the multi-state licenses, are only going to be for temporary work in a state. And they don't define how long temporary is. It just means you have to have your home state license and you can work elsewhere. But if you move to that other state, like Leslie mentioned earlier, you have to get the license in that state that you move to. So it is mostly, I think, going to apply to people like maybe people from the Reno area for California, where they might jump over to Reno, or, you know, or they might, I can't even remember the town that's over there. What is it? Lake Tahoe. I've been there. I just had a space. So I think that's where it's going to most likely come into effect, or like if you're in Kentucky and Ohio and Cleveland and Louisville, you know what I mean, or Spokane and Idaho, Boise. So I think it's going to have a lot of impact on that. Or if somebody's taking care of an ill family member, they're going to come in and
30 seconds.
Stick around with that. So I think this is a good move. I know California doesn't usually pass compacts, so good luck. But I think it's a good start. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other in-person comments? Okay, seeing none at this time, can we open it for online comments?
Certainly, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. Instructions are on the screen. If anyone would like to make a comment, they can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the comment text box and click send, or they may raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, now that public comment has closed, can we get a roll call vote on the motion?
Callie Mae Pham,
Yes?
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Kelly Funk,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Despite my concerns related to the process and related to the committee, I won't hold the policy back, and I approve. Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Colette Kavanaugh,
Yes, with further research.
Danielle Munoz,
Yes.
Jacob Rostovsky,
Yes.
Steve Weeks.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. I look forward to discussing it again in the future. At this time, we still have quite a bit on our agenda. I just want to check in with the board. Does anyone need, okay, let's do we still have quite a bit to cover, so let's do a 5-minute break, starting now. We don't need a motion, right? No, okay. All right, it's 11:03. Let's try to be back by 11:08. Thank you.
That's interesting. Should like come out there temporarily.
All right, we're going to resume our agenda. If we can have everyone take their seat. Okay, having finished item 17, let's move on to item 10, review and discussion of affordability and accessibility of education and updates to the website to reach prospective students. Christy, can we have an update?
Sure. Okay, so this was brought up as an agenda item from our last meeting. So what we did was we developed we researched schools in the state, and we've provided a range of what tuition costs. So you have that in your packet. Regarding barbering 1,000 hours, we've put the low, medium, and high ranges for each of those, and then also with the 1,500-hour program, and same for each of our license types. And then we also looked at community colleges, which is $46 per unit. It just depends on what a student does for how much they end up totally paying for a community college course, because they will add additional courses often with community colleges. And then you have your apprenticeship. We have that range, which is something we're currently working on. There is a Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education law that says any institution that charges I believe it's $2,499 minimum or maximum is not considered an institution, but if you're charging more than that, you're actually considered an institution. So it's something that we're working with the Bureau on right now, that these apprenticeship programs that are charging these $8,000 tuitions are technically schools. So that's something that we're in the process of addressing with the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary, as well as the Division of Apprenticeship Standards right now.
Christy, I have a question on that. In addressing this, is this going to force a change in the tuition cost or a change in the classification of the school?
It'll be up to the apprenticeship program. So because what is going to happen is they're going to get cited by the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary as an unlicensed school, which is a huge fine. I think it's $50,000, 50. And then we are looking into our own rules about what we would do, or what we even have the authority to do if we have a program that BPPE has deemed is a school. So they're an unlicensed school, but we have them approved as a program. So it's going to take some collaboration with the Division of Apprenticeship Standards and the Bureau to see what we can do and where authority. I know Sabina's working on looking into this deeper for us right now, but really a apprenticeship program is only supposed to charge reasonable cost to run the program, and a reasonable cost is not $8,000.
Right.
Obviously. So it's still too soon to tell, but the programs are going to have to make a decision if they want to become a school or if they want to become an apprenticeship program.
My next question is there a loophole? The reason why these schools have been able to get away with it for so long with charging this additional over the $29.99?
I don't know if I would call it a loophole. It's an interesting situation because they are approved with the Division of Apprenticeship Standards as an apprentice program sponsor. They're approved by us as a program sponsor. So BPPE really isn't involved whatsoever because they're a program sponsor. They're not even looking at them. We have brought up this issue because we are starting to see, it's been a while, that we've seen the amounts that are being charged to these individuals. And we've had discussions with BPPE for a while on what they can do for these apprenticeship program sponsors. And really it's just now starting to come to a point to where BPPE is going to start taking some action, and then hopefully the Division of Apprenticeship Standards is as well. So it's not necessarily a loophole, it's just kind of been kind of out of sight, out of mind of people who might have more authority than we do.
You know, as talking about loopholes, maybe legally we can take a look at also, California has a seller-assisted marketing plan law in which it says that anyone that charges money, corporate or real, anyone that charges money over $500 has to register under this seller-assisted marketing plan law. Someone could say, I'm not a school, I'm registered under this law to teach separately, and this is what you get from it. They wouldn't get the ability to test from us, that's for sure. Right. But we might want to look at that, the SAMP law, and see if that impacts what we're talking about today.
Interesting.
Question. So it's, from what I'm gathering, the only way people can receive like student aid or funding or grants is through the community college option?
No.
Or, okay, that's like, so these other programs do have some funding options?
Definitely. So any of our private schools, if they are accredited, can offer student aid. That's not something we look at in our approval process. So that's something we're looking at now, and we're talking to the licensing committee about this because we're seeing such low pass rates in some of our schools that if they're accredited, they have to maintain a certain pass rate for their accreditation. But if they're not accredited, and we have a lot that are not accredited, then there's nothing at all that they have to maintain. So that's definitely something we're looking more into. But yes, schools, a lot of our schools are accredited.
Great, and that actually is a good segue to my next question is there any data around pass-fail rates between the schools that cost more and the schools that are on the lower range?
That's interesting. We just did, for our licensing committee, which is, you'll see here in your packet in a little bit, we did pass-fail rates by schools, and we provide that information on our website, but we've not ever looked at pass-fail rates by tuition.
Yeah, because my thought is always the justification of cost, right? Oh, we have so-and-so teaching, great, but are your students passing?
Right.
So that's something I'd be interested to know more about.
Okay. And then we also provided a map on here that where we actually grouped, like, we did a map of where you can see where our schools are positioned in all of California, which I was impressed that our staff was able to do it. Oh, Carrie. Oh, thank you. And I thought it was really interesting to see how our schools are spread out through California.
Danielle, did you have a comment?
It's gone. All
right. Chrissy, I just wanted to confirm that what I'm seeing, which is it looks like the program costs haven't changed from going from the longer programs to the shorter hours. It looks like pricing is pretty similar to the way it was before. Is that right?
We haven't seen it drastically. I definitely, like, I know some schools, I've spoken at some schools, and I know they have reduced their costs.
Okay.
So I think it's just hit and miss.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Right. Any other comments or questions from the board?
I do remember, now I don't know if this is even the scope of our board or we recommend it, but some sort of like employment return on investment. I'd be interested if you're putting in, like, where are you now? The return on investment. So you paid $10,000 for a program versus paying $2,200, and now you're in practice, and what does that look like?
I don't know how.
And I don't know who would do that, but it would sort of be like more employment based, just for it's so that people can make an informed decision. Like, I'm a licensed therapist. When I'm looking at schools, I'm looking at all of that because I could go to the Carol Dweck School at USC, right, for like $80,000, or I can go to a CSU for $24,000 and $30,000. So I'm looking at where are those practice, like those licensees, how are they doing, and that helps me too. And just a little bit of, but it's more on like the social justice side. Like, am I really getting what I'm? Is it the return on investment? Because a lot of these folks, this is their livelihood.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can look into that.
All right. If there's nothing else from the board, we will take public comment on this item. First, we'll start in person. Hi, Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. To kind of address your comment here, you can go to a fancy brand name school, you can go to a community college, and basically the sentiment amongst the students is they teach you to take the board exam and get on with it. It seems pretty, in the licensed population, it seems pretty even that that's the opinion right now. So you could be going to, say, Bellis Academy that sells a master esthetician program that would not expand our scope at all, basically. Or you could go to Cerritos Community College and you can get childcare and you can get other things. I think one of the things that would be nice to see is more community colleges being brought into the mix, and that the licensed population, from a social justice advocacy standpoint, that the licensed population has more of an ability to go to a community college and get a more well-rounded education, not just 600 hours a selfie and I hope I pass my test. The other thing is you know, the schools will call you afterwards and they'll hound you and hound you and hound you and say, did you get a job? 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 And everybody just goes, yeah, I got $5,000 from my grandma. I'm opening up my studio, you know, my own studio. Stop calling me. That's the reality, whether they got a job or not. And we all know as licensed professionals, actual W-2 employment coming out of school
30 seconds
is almost non-existent unless you're going to go work at EWC or Supercuts or any of the big chains. Actual real employment as your first job out of school is very few and far between. So from the licensee standpoint, that's a little bit more.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment for those here in person? No. Seeing none, can we open public comment online?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you have a comment, you can look for the question mark icon in the lower right of your computer screen, and in the text box, type the word comment and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So let's move on to our report on our January 9th, 2023 Licensing and Examination Committee meeting. I will turn it over to Chair Steve Weeks to provide an update.
Thank you very much. Let me preface it by saying that as we talk about what's happening with the schools, can I mention that the majority of our schools are fine and trying to do the right thing? You know, that we really, and that's evidenced by the hundreds of thousands of licensees we have in the state. That tells you something right there. But we were looking at a staff report presented to us that I think you also all have a copy of this in front of you that shows you statistics of some of these schools. And we're kind of charged with now looking at the problem of low school pass rates and how do you deal with that? How do you recognize it? What do you do about it? And, you know, we've been dealing with the low Hispanic pass rates for years and have never, you know, have had the difficulty solving that problem. We blamed it on composition of the test, language difficulties of apprentice education, just seems to change regularly with us when we look at that. But now there's a hole in our system that we don't seem to be able to fix necessarily just by ourselves. We're going to need some help with other people, probably post-secondary education getting involved. But we're looking at a very low pass rate on a significant number of our approved schools. If you view the report that was presented by staff, and there was a lot of time and effort put into that report, thank you, it's a great report. It appears that the 2022 overall pass rate have a pass rate less than 40% of them have a pass rate less than 50%. 50% isn't asking too much, so it really tells you that the situation's probably worse than that. But 41% of these schools come back with poor markings as far as their graduates passing our tests year after year. So, you know, we have to look at the numbers, and I know we're limited to what we can do basically in curriculum and initial approval of the schools. We seem to have our hands tied greatly there, but we've been talking about for years now that we should get more involved and be more involved with the Bureau of Post-Secondary Education, maybe taking over this area of dealing with the schools. I don't know if that's correct or not. I think maybe there's somewhere in between that we can get involved and do what we need to do. And what we need to do is see that the schools have decent pass rates. And there should probably be some sort of punitive basis if they don't have it, whether they're on probation, whether they're called out online, I'm not sure what that's going to be yet. We haven't really discussed it as a committee, the specifics of that, but it should be brought to the attention of this board that it appears to be a new and serious problem that we've got to somehow deal with in the months ahead. And timing's of the essence of this, because every month we wait, we see more and more students throwing their money away and wasting their months of their lives on something that was, by the numbers, not going to happen to begin with. So that's what we're looking at right now, and I think we want to go into much more detail on that. Christy, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Sure. I think, and we'll be looking deeper with accrediting company, the accrediting agency, trying to determine where we are, because I actually had another conversation again with the chief of the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary, and we're going to set up a joint meeting with our staff and them to really look at some of these schools that are poor performing and come up with a plan for what we can do to address it. One of the biggest issues I have is we have very clear authority to go into schools to check for health and safety, but not clear authority to go into schools to look at quality of education. And BPPE does. I mean, that's probably more in their purview. But as our newer members know, you're being asked in Senate confirmation questions, we're being asked in sunset reviews, like what are we doing about the pass rates? And so I really want to be able to dive deep, and you know, we can only look at the exam so many times, and we can only check the translations so many times. And so to me, again, we have some really good schools, and we have schools that are doing everything perfectly and have great passing rates, which is obvious. But we have some schools that, how are they taking more money from individuals and their pass rates have been 30% for the past 4 years straight? So that's kind of where I'm looking at it is, and the Bureau as well. Their chief has been there for a year now, and very concerned with that as well. And so hopefully we get some better updates for the committee at least, and then ultimately to the board on how we can handle this.
You know, I was going to say,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I think as we discussed in the committee, and we've said this before, the board is being held accountable for something that we have no authority to enforce. And so I think what my concern is, and we talked about this, is these schools that are not being held responsible for these low pass rates or performance are taking money from the students. It's not falling back on the schools, it's falling back on the board. Right. So there has to be we have to get to a place to where we change that narrative, and the only way to change that narrative, honestly, a lot of times is to hit them in the pocket, right? Like, they have to be held accountable for what they're not producing. Again, we have those schools we know. I mean, Chrissy, we talk about one school in particular who has an amazing pass rate, right? They take education very seriously. Then you have those schools who've been around for a very long time that maybe only have 1 or 2 people a year, but yet they're still being counted as a school that is not producing the results that they should be producing. So, again, like I said, we have to get to a place where we make some definitive, I don't know if it's suggestions, whatever the definitive route that we can take so that it gets off the board and onto these schools to take responsibility, and BPPE combined with us get to a place to where we start enacting these things, because at the end of it, who suffers?
Right.
We're putting consumer safety at risk. We're allowing this to take place for the people who are taking these courses, who are paying this money, and yet they're the ones that get out of school saying, oh, I didn't do it because this I didn't learn anything. So again, we're talking about this again. I was here last year, April, we were talking about the same thing, and we have to get to a place to where you get some definitives, and whatever that takes from us as a board, I think that we are at that place where we're like ready to say, okay, what do we need to do?
That comes back, if I can, to an issue we have addressed in the past on the board, where we were going to have a discussion into looking at the language level of the written exams and so forth, and whether or not that needed to be lowered. And my understanding would that would take a state statute, and that it would need to go through this committee first, this licensing committee first. Has that been discussed at the committee level?
Yeah, we just did that. I'm sorry. We did have that discussion, and I think that's that'll be on the next one, right?
That's not what it says here in the update.
This committee reviewed the educational level for applying to the board.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the written exams being at an educational level, that they're written from the state's perspective at a level of education. We've discussed that before.
We have, and unfortunately, I think they left already, but they do have their exams. Do you recall what is PSI's exams level?
10th grade, isn't it? Yeah. It's at a 10th grade level. I think we discussed lowering it, and we all agreed that would not be in the best interest, because it will give us even lower pass-fail rates, but then it's not.
Okay, I just don't see that in this update. The update has about the applications, not about the discussion over whether or not we discussed the state language being written at a lower level.
You mean the actual exam?
Yes, because that's what we discussed at our last board meeting, was the issue that there might be some language that the people taking the test may not be as familiar with in a 10th grade level shears versus scissors level, but understanding it written, they would understand what the concept is and could pass. That's what we had discussed at the last board meeting.
Right, and PSI was at our last board meeting as well, and I believe that their exams are, and they were here earlier, they must have left already, they have to match the statute, I believe, for the 10th grade, because that's what is required by law for somebody to apply for the exam. So I don't think that the examination's going to be lowered to a level other than what is statutorily required to qualify for the exam.
So this is an equation of the two, is what you're saying, because it's statutorily related to people who apply, therefore the exams need to be written at that level.
Right.
Okay.
Christy, can I ask a question too? Under their current regulations, can the Bureau of Post-Secondary Education initiate disciplinary procedures against a school for low pass rates? Can they?
No.
They cannot.
There is no passage rate set in any statute. There's a pass rate set by accreditation companies. So if they drop below their pass rate for a certain amount of time, I believe, then their accreditation company could remove their accrediting, and that would make them lose their federal funding.
Right.
So how do we find that out, though? How do we know that these schools, because we don't have that, we don't have the list of schools that are accredited and aren't, and pass-fail rates for that?
It's like accreditation doesn't even come into play for us. When we approve a brand new school, well, first of all, schools don't have to renew with us. They apply once with us, and there's no fee, and then they're approved forever. So they don't renew with us. They do renew with the Bureau, and that is something that the Bureau looks at. You're approved either by accreditation or by non-accreditation. So they have two different pathways, and they have to renew. But for us, we don't even ask those questions. So we have no idea unless we manually go into the accreditation company and look at each school to determine who's accredited and who's not.
Can we easily change, or can the regulations be changed from their perspective that they could discipline a school for having low pass rates?
They would need a statutory change, I believe, for that.
Okay, but we're kind of beating our heads against the state wall as far as anyone truly interested in the legislature for somehow letting us take over a portion of what post-secondary is doing right now. Maybe it'd be simpler to go against that regulation and then us show them a list every month of who's not passing, because it wouldn't cost us anything. It wouldn't cost us people or anything else to pass that on to them, kind of go backwards. Maybe instead of trying to have them let go of something they already own, which I found in government is very difficult to do, very difficult to do. Maybe they could just do that, and we can find a way of working together by showing them the non-pass rates and let them take discipline.
Yes, and that's what I have talked to them about, that we're going to get together, we're going to look at some of these schools. The problem is there's not, what's the pass rate? Is it 50%? Is it 60%? There's no pass rate set in anyone's statute that we can say that makes you a good school or a bad school, or and then it fluctuates as well.
But we could state that, or it could be stated in statute.
Yes, that would probably be tougher to do than the compact.
Christy, related to the Danielle's point earlier about kind of return on investment, or I know at least for law schools, when you're researching law schools, you want to know how many people from that school pass the bar. So we do have we make the information public about which schools are approved, and we have this data on which schools act at like percentage of pass rates from these schools. Is there any issue with actually publishing this information, or even going further, maybe not this one, but even requiring that schools disclose to students before they enroll how many people actually pass the exam in their courses?
So we publish it by school name. In your packets with the information that I provided to the committee, I did not include school names, but online it is public. It's by quarter, and I believe we even have archives, so you can go back years and years. The issue is what makes a student go onto the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology's website to look that up, which is why we created that little pamphlet to hand out at like high schools. But of course, we know it's not just high school students. We have a lot of people that look at this industry as second careers. So it's getting that word out to those potential students to look at those schools.
But maybe, as you mentioned, mandatory requirements at the beginning that the schools disclose this.
Can we make them do that? It sounds like the conversation has been that we...
Contract?
School regulations.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
There might be something on the BPPE level that requires it in there. I don't know off the top of my head if it's required for BPPE, by BPPE for them to put pass-fail rates in their catalogs. But, so yeah, it's something. We want to look at doing regulations for schools to begin with. We think we have some authority to already do increase our oversight. The problem is we don't get a fee and we don't have a renewal. So that's one of the things that we should we have to go to the legislature and ask for an application fee, because right now, the work that we do on schools, we have 2 staff dedicated to schools, and that's 2 staff that we're taking out of our enforcement unit. Our enforcement unit is carrying, all of our analysts in enforcement are carrying cases at a level of 260, 250, 260, and that's way higher than what it should be. because we've redirected staff to handle the school workload that's really unfunded. And that's what we talked about in the committee meeting, is the fact that these schools, a new school goes and applies to the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary, and it's a $5,000 application fee for a brand new school. And for us, it's free. And it's a lot of work. We put in a lot of work.
So how do we change that?
We need statutory authority to change that. So we would need to try to get the legislature to give us that authority, which I think they will. I think in the past it's never been an option, and I think there's been some changes where it definitely, they see the workload that we have to do, and that workload needs to be supported. So I would hope that we could try to get that.
Do you think with these pass and fail rates and us trying to address it, we have leverage?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say this is the most important consumer protection starting point that we could do, is to tighten the belt on schools and see what we can do to upgrade the student's experience, you know, in any way. No dumbing it down, no bringing it down a level. We've already, I think, stripped away with the practical being gone, and I feel like these students just deserve their experience that they currently already are. It's already less than what I got 20 years ago with the practical and all the hands-on. And so I just think if we could just tighten the belt on the schools a little bit to give them their best when the students are there, that would be the best.
And could we not, it's hard for us to concentrate on these non-performing schools because we can't get into them. We see the numbers on the testing side, but maybe as we analyze the problem, we can go to our successful schools and ask what they're doing right. And what bring them into this process too.
I think, if I may interject here real quick, what did come out of this committee meeting and this update is that it's just a renewed reminder for staff and you all and the EO that the schools and the regulations surrounding that really need to be looked at a little closer, and the staff, and that's on their radar, and they're already, you know, it's already in the works.
Okay, so do you need any specific direction or motion from the board beyond what we've already discussed? Great, thank you. Okay, so with that, let's do public comment. Okay, we'll start with in-person public comment.
Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. Don't beat yourself up about the schools, because you really are not the guardians of this fully. You can walk in, you can do an inspection in the schools, but it seems like the schools themselves and the BPPE need to step up. Talent can't be regulated. My personal study habits cannot be regulated as a professional, and I believe that it was Yolanda that brought up that not everybody graduates high school in the regular world, not even associated with our industry. So I know this is a perpetual, you know, what are we doing wrong? You kind of really aren't. If you look at a school and you Google California Beauty School right now, you can go down into their website and they have a school performance fact sheet that anyone in the public can access. And it says everything from, did you get a job? Are you self-employed? Did you, how many people passed and graduated the school? How many people passed the state exam? So these documents are already in existence through the websites for these schools. Whether consumers do their due diligence and find this information on their own and take that to heart before they sign up, and they think, oh my gosh, this glamorous life of doing makeup and hair is going to be amazing, and they don't do their due diligence, you all can't control that. But these documents and these statements do exist here. So how we get the consumers to do more due diligence in examining what schools they decide to go to or not is kind of the sticky wicket there, and that's something that you can't exactly regulate.
Thank you, Wendy. What was the website?
So the website that I'm currently looking at is the RedondoBeachBeautyCollege.com or rbbeautycollege.com. But you can look at this for just about any, and it is called I believe it's from the BPPE, it's School Performance Fact Sheet. And you can find all that information online about each of the schools that you decide to investigate and attend.
Thank you. Our next public comment.
Madam President, board members, Fred Jones again on behalf of the Professional Beauty Federation of California. Your predecessors on a number of occasions officially voted to have sole oversight of schools taken from BPPE and given to the state board. My association has supported that all along. Whether it's apprenticeship programs falling between the cracks of 3 different regulatory agencies, or in this case, 2 regulatory agencies and bad schools continuing to fall between the cracks. There needs to be one sheriff in town, one agency that has the authority and that has the scope of licensing authority, which is absolutely key, because BPPE deals with computer tech, they deal with phlebotomy, they don't have the technical expertise, they don't understand our students, they don't understand our schools. Our students go to school 8 hours a day. That's very unusual for BPPE licensed schools. And every one of our schools pay BPPE tens of thousands of dollars every year to be approved by BPPE. And what do they get from it? They get desk audits that nobody at BPPE even reads. So the bad schools are being treated just like the good schools. They're all being screwed, but ultimately it's the students of the bad schools that are getting the short end of the stick. And by the way, your staff knows who the bad schools are, but their hands are tied because they lack the statutory authority to go in and clean them up, close them down. The only way this gets solved is to have one sheriff in town, and that should be your board.
Thank you. Seeing no other in-person public comments, let's move to our online public comment.
Thank you. This is the moderator, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment into that text box and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. And I see no requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move on to item number 12, report on the January 9th, 2023 Education and Outreach Committee meeting. I'd like to turn to Chair Tanya Fairley.
The Enforcement and Inspections Committee met on January the 9th and discussed several items, and I must say this was a really good, yes?
Oh, I apologize. Education and Outreach.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is Education and Outreach. And I can say that it was a really good development through this. We made a lot of headway with some things that we are focusing on. The committee, we was provided with the plans to update the website, which we have the new pamphlet for. And it's for prospective students, which you all have received a copy of. We also discussed creating a new regulation that will require an email address and phone numbers, and I will turn that over to Christy for her to elaborate a little bit more on the background of that item and some additional items.
All right. So the Education and Outreach Committee is making a couple recommendations to the full board today. They are, one, to make a motion to direct staff to prepare regulatory language requiring licensees to disclose their email address and their phone number if they have one. So we looked at several other boards within the Department of Consumer Affairs, found that actually several boards have this already, and some are actually in the process at the same point we are, or maybe even a little ahead of us. So we, the way it's worded to them is because we don't want to make it be a requirement that someone gets denied licensure if they don't have that, because we do have people that do not have email addresses. And so this is language that we kind of stole from other boards. If you have one, you have to give it to us. So that would require, that would be the first recommendation from the committee to the full board today, if they so choose to make that motion.
This would be voluntary. And would we use it in any other way?
So it would, what we would do is we would modify our regulations, our regulatory language for the application process. Right? Okay. For some reason I was thinking something else. And yes, it's obviously we're saying if you have it, you have to give it. If you don't, you don't have to give it. So if they're not giving it to us, we're not going to follow up with them and say something because it's an option. But it will hopefully encourage more people to give that contact information. Exactly.
And that's what I was going to say, Steve. I think the goal is to increase our communication with them and making them think a little bit more on giving us information to help them stay abreast of things and changes that are coming. Because, again, a lot of people aren't on social media, so they're not seeing the Facebook ads or the TikTok ads and all that. So what we talked about was really getting in a space where we are actually showing that we have exhausted all avenues when it comes to the education and outreach.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that, like, as we look into like Zillennials or Gen Zs and stuff getting into the field, a lot of them don't even have like they have email, but they never use it. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, text messaging is a huge asset to getting all of our I'm thinking like the button, right, to upload documents on the application. You send out a quick text that's like, hey, everyone preparing to apply, don't forget to upload and click submit, right? Easy peasy.
Right.
And it's a lot easier to search in your texts for a number than to look at your emails that have 17,000 unread emails because Gen Zs don't check their emails. So I love it.
Can I give you my fax number on my AOL?
We already have it.
So I just want to clarify, it looks like we're kind of touching on two things. Item 12, about the recommendation about requiring, well, actually, two separate, so requiring emails and phone numbers, and separate from that, whether we want to pursue mass texting.
Yes, so the committee is making two recommendations to the board today. One, and they'll need to be separate motions, which is why we separated it on the agenda to make it clear what the board would be voting on. And this was our first time having to do this. So it took us, the agenda definitely looks a little different this time. So the first motion that the board would do is on the regulation change to require the email and phone number if they have it. And then the second motion would be recommendation from the committee is to pursue a program of mass text messaging. So the text messages that go out. And the committee's recommendation is to move forward with that option of sending mass text messaging to those that we can.
Okay, thank you, Christy, for that clarification. As to the issue of email addresses and phone numbers, I feel like that's very straightforward. We require it for all kinds of other kinds of licenses. And just with information that we want to be able to communicate quickly, it is crazy to try to rely on just mailing it to people and hoping that we still have up-to-date mailing addresses, because it's very real that people move and in between when we're able to follow up with updates. So I'm in favor, and I would move to prepare or pursue regulation to require licensees disclose email addresses and phone numbers. Do we have a second on that?
I second.
Okay, great. Member Callie Funk seconded, and let's take public comment. Okay, it looks like we do have in-person public comment.
Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. I polled members of our 8,000 members in the group. Many of them are 20-ish, many of them are 60-ish. Everybody said no on the text messaging. They, you know, the people that are going to say, they change the regulations all the time. We all know what it takes to change a regulation, right? It takes years and months and lots of committee meetings and things like that. So they felt that actual regulatory change, which is in the regulations and the statute, if it is affecting an interested party, a licensee type, if something is changing in the aesthetics licensing, then you have to communicate with us and communicate that change, right? So they preferred to get emails because you can't see an entire change in a text message. And then the people that are going to respond to your text messages are going to go, yeah, but what if I do this? And then who at the BBC is going to be responding to all these text messages? Are they just going to be like, hi, we're just checking in, reply stop to unsubscribe? I mean, it seems like better outreach could be made possibly through the email and possibly through these Facebook Lives that you're considering, and more town halls with, you know, an accessibility to the licensed population. But the text messages that you're going to send, you're either going to get a question asked back, and who's going to answer that, or they're going to ask to have you not send them text messages anymore. So I just wanted to point that out to folks from a licensee standpoint.
Thank you for that. Any other public comment? And just a reminder, we're looking at the motion for requiring licensees to disclose email addresses and phone numbers. We haven't made a motion about text messaging yet. So with that, are there any other in-person comments? Okay, seeing none, can we open online public comment on this item or this motion before the board?
Certainly, and we have the Q&A feature of WebEx on. In case anyone would like to make a comment on the motion, you can look for the question mark icon in the lower right corner of your computer screen. You can type the word comment into that text box and click send, or anyone may raise their hand by clicking on the hand icon. Is there any comment on the motion? I see no comment. Shall I close the Q&A?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator. Okay, can we have a roll call vote on the current motion?
Callie Mae Pham,
Yes.
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Kelly Funk,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Colette Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Danielle Munoz,
Yes.
Jacob Rostovsky,
Yes.
Steve Weeks.
Yes.
Wonderful. That motion passes. So with that, let's move on to our second point here. If we have phone numbers, what are we going to do about them?
Right. So this is, the committee did look at the pros and cons that the staff provided to them on the mass text messaging. There is a cost involved with this, but we couldn't really determine the exact cost because we don't really have an idea on how many text messages we'd be talking about. We would want people to kind of opt into that option. But we did do an Instagram poll as well and got a fairly good response on this. And the committee did want staff to pursue this and bring it to the board for your discussion on if you would like us to pursue the text messaging option.
Christy, also, I remember we talked at this meeting that you were going to bring us some cost back in regards, there's another department that is already doing it.
Yes.
And I heard what you just said, that we don't know how many, but what I wanted to add was there are other platforms outside of what a committee here is already doing that might provide a different cost analysis. Like I know the program that I use in my salon, I can send out 5,000 text messages for $50 a month.
Right.
So I think it definitely is something that, I mean, if we're looking at cost effectiveness, it doesn't have to be astronomical.
Right.
And yes, I do understand that there's that catch-22. If we're sending updates, does it apply to a particular industry under the licensing, or is it are we breaking it up by scope of practice when we send out these text messages? I know the emails will not be, but in the text message genre, so we don't have massive unsubscribes because you're sending esthetician stuff for cosmetology.
Right. Exactly. And we did find that another DCA entity did do this, and their cost was $500 for 12,000 messages.
That's a lot from what I just in what I know. So I would definitely suggest that if we pursue this, to look at other avenues that are
Right,
a little bit more cost-effective.
To do with who the state has contracts with.
Okay, state needs to put more people on the board.
So it's not like we can just go out and choose whoever. And it has to also be compatible with the technology that we have, et cetera, and so on. So there's a lot more things we have to consider as opposed to you as an independent business owner that can choose anything you want.
I'd like to ask members of the committee who discussed this what the discussion was like on the content or what we're trying to do with these text messages, because I think everyone knows or is familiar with there is a fine line between like some information is helpful and then after a certain point you ignore it. And I think that there's also what I envision what we could do. Well, one, I would note that people would have to opt in. So it's not like we'd just be spamming everyone we have a phone number for. They would have to choose to get our messages. So people who don't want them don't have to have them. And then two, I would imagine that what I imagine is almost an informational text with possibly a link, like we have posted new information about this issue, click here for more information, or, we sent out an email today, please check your inboxes, something like that, just as an alert, really. That's what I would envision as the best way to balance this concern of not overloading people with information and still having the text be effective. I would love to hear from other committee members if they had other thoughts in mind for what the intention for the text would be.
Thank you. I actually serve on the committee and was part of the discussion. I would say that one of the things I would concur with Board Member Kuska. I'm sorry, I don't know. I missed out.
Rostowski.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. In the comments earlier about texting, a lot of communications are done by texting. We discussed that at the committee and how people often don't read their emails or look at emails, but a text to find an email or a text with a link is a consideration for getting the information out. And so that was something we weighed, as well as the fact that it would be an optional possibility. It meant that they would be opting in to getting the text. So we were in favor of it.
Also, I think that as a point was made earlier, you start to get boggled down with just getting those emails, and as easier as a text is, I think my concern would just be if we can make it scope specific, because I don't want to get a bunch of text messages for estheticians. I don't want to get for manicurists. So I think that if however we proceed with this, if keeping in mind specific of the scope would allow more people to, one, if they opt in, to stay opt-in. Because after you get too many that don't pertain to what you're doing, that's when you get a higher number of, well, let me opt out. So.
So go ahead. I was going to make a motion, but go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just, to Tanya's point, I wonder, is there a way for us to screen for that? Or when we're asking people to opt in, is there a way to ask them what kind of messages they want or give them the option to get all of them? I'm not sure how that would actually work.
Press 1 for esthetician.
Yeah.
Press 2.
I don't really know yet. We'd have to look at the contracting process and who we could contract with and see what the capabilities are. And I also think that once we move forward with that aspect of it, should the board vote today for staff to move forward with text messages, we would probably bring this back to the education committee to really talk about the content of these text messages, and definitely by scope, because I think that's a great suggestion. We don't want to, send nails to a barber. So we would definitely work more with the education team on a committee on that content of those text messages. But the motion today would give staff the direction to move forward, and then we'll hopefully by the state contracting process is extensive, as some of you know, and we'll be able to see what type of, what we could get, the biggest bang for our buck, and what type of system they could provide us.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board members? I believe we're about to.
Yeah, I just want to make one last comment. If it does come down to, like, okay, it's going to be costly, let's triage and, like, really figure out where the acute need is. I also feel like we can look at our own operations and where we might have potential licensees where there's anticipated communication from the board. Right now, we're talking about unanticipated. It's unsolicited. But what if somebody just went through the process and they're waiting for us, right? Is there anywhere in here that a quick text could do it, like we received your application? It's in progress. And then it's time limited. You may only receive it with the first few months of your license. When you're done, we're on to the next client, right? We received your application, or we need more from you, click here. And then we're just using it to maximize our own operations and make things easy. So if you had to come down to a need, and, you know, I also want us to think about how it helps your office too, and those time limited, and then it makes sense, and the client actually anticipated that from us, so it's actually appreciated.
I love that.
Yeah, so with, you know, those ideas in mind, you know, I'm proposing to make a motion to move forward to send scope-specific mass texting to licensees.
Do we have a second on that motion?
I second.
Oh, I think I hear a little. Okay, well, I'm looking at Danielle, so we're moving by Jacob and then a second by Danielle. Any further public in-person comment on this issue of sending text messages to licensees who opt in?
Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. With respect to cosmetology and only sending things to their specific scope, remember you can do skin and nails as well. So many of our older estheticians or estheticians that live in areas that don't have aesthetic programs are actually cosmetologists, so it would be difficult unless you had the option when you are opting in, specifically as was discussed, to give me the information on aesthetics, give me the information on when my application is being processed and things like that. Opting in and selecting the information that you're going to receive is going to be important, because you can't, with the Cosmos, just talk about hair, unfortunately. So.
Thank you. Do we have another public comment? Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. Jamie Schaubeck, Precision Nails. I'm a bit confused if we're going to be using text messaging as we do the opt-in interested parties email list, because this motion is very specific to licensees. And if we're looking for another way to communicate with everyone, consumers, licensees, future licensees, I see text messaging as being very useful, but this motion itself is very specific to just licensees. And tying it back to the previous motion, as someone who is not going to be applying for a license but will be renewing a license, you're not going to be able to link my specific email address, which is on the interested parties list, and my phone number to me as a licensee until I reapply for my license, and that may come up in the new application form for renewal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any, so seeing no other public comment in person, do we have any online public comment?
And we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone has another comment, you can look for the question mark icon. Once you click that, there will be a text box, type the word comment and click send. The other option is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. Are there any comments? I do not see any comments at this time. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, at this time, can we get a roll call vote?
Callie Mae Pham,
Yes?
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Kelly Funk,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Colette Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Danielle Munoz,
Yes.
Jacob Rostovsky,
Yes.
Steve Weeks.
Yes.
So motion passes. And then I think, Chrissy, that's a great point for us to consider. Obviously, we're just starting the process, and so we'll have to work out the details of exactly how we approach it. But
the possibility of other people opting in, people who want more information. I think that doesn't hurt. So I would like that to be something that is explored. Okay, so at this time, we're at 12:10. We still have quite a few kind of meatier discussion items on the agenda. I wanted to see what the board thinks about a short lunch break, maybe 30 minutes. How are we looking? There's a cafe here, so we, all right, does that sound, okay, because I don't think we can push through it like quickly. There's still a few things. All right, so then let's take a recess. It's 12:10 right now. Let's come back at 12:40, okay? All right, thank you. Okay, we are going to reconvene. Do we need to reestablish quorum, or are we okay? All right, looks like everyone is here. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, so we are on so we did 12, 13, and 14. So we took the Education and Outreach Committee report and the two motions, so we are on item 15 for the Enforcement and Inspections Committee. I will turn it over to Danielle, our chair.
Thank you. So for the Enforcement and Inspections Committee, we met on January 9th, and we discussed creating a remedial education program. So the committee is recommending to the board that we do a statutory change to be able to allow us to explore and create this. So I wanted to pass it over to Christy to provide a little more background.
All right, so the committee discussed developing a remedial education program for someone to take in lieu of a fine for their citation. And what we would need is statutory authority for that. So for the board, what we recommend is that we ask for statutory authority, but we develop that program in regulation. So what the recommendation to the board is today from the committee is to add to section 7407.1, which is in your packet, which was that the board shall establish by regulation a remedial education program in lieu of a first offense of a health and safety violation, which may include a fee to cover the cost of administering the program. And then if we had that specific statutory authority, then we could work with the industry as well as our committees on developing that actual remedial education program. But we would need the authority to do that first.
I would so move.
Seconded.
Okay, do we have any other comments from the board members before we go to public comment?
Just a clarification question. So this is kind of similar to the other agenda item that we were like, we would have to go and change statutory regulations. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to mint, but yes, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other board comments or questions?
I would just like to thank the committee. This is something we've been discussing for a long time. I'm so excited to see this in our agenda, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's take public comment on this item number 15 and the motion before us.
Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. I would like to understand a little bit before you get into the regulations and making this motion as to what level of citation you're talking about. Are you talking about I have to sit there and take an hour-long course because one of my labels fell off of my canister? Or are you asking me to take a 1-hour course because obviously my sanitation is something, or from the perspective of an esthetician with a crazy piece of equipment in my room, I didn't know it wasn't in my scope of practice. So what level are you also considering is going to be in that place? So I think that that's something that really needs to be discussed by the board because those are all very different things. Thank you.
Can I interject? Agreed. This is just giving them the authority to move forward with that program. And so since it will be established by regulations, you'll be seeing it plenty of times.
Excellent.
When they develop the program, it's going to go through committee and then the language will be developed, and then through the committee, and then it'll be moved to the board. So this is not the last time you've heard or seen this. So you'll definitely be a part of that process if you're participating.
Priming the pump for you all to think about these things. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, can we have our next public comment?
Jamie Schaubeck, Precision Nails again. Thank you. I would recommend that you strike the phrase "in lieu of a first offense" because that is so specific here. Rather, something to say to mitigate the costs or the collecting the fines due instead, or just getting rid of it altogether. But I don't think limiting this to a first offense is something you want to state right now.
All right, thank you for that comment. Okay, any other in-person public comment? Okay, at this time, can we move to online public comment?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone has a comment on the motion, you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment into that text box and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and instructions are on the screen. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. Are there any comments? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Callie Mae Sam,
Yes?
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Kelly Funk,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Despite the fact that this, again, does not include the Legislative and Budget Committee in any conversation related to this as a possibility, as we've seen as others, and apparently the committee is irrelevant to legislative proposals, I will not hold the policy back, and I vote yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Colette Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Danielle Munoz,
Yes.
Danielle Rosofsky.
So Jacob?
Oh, Jacob, I'm so sorry.
I like it.
Sorry,
Yes,
Jacob,
yes.
I apologize.
No, all good, yes.
Steve Weeks.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. So that takes care of item 15 and 16 on the agenda. We've already addressed item 17 on the agenda, so let's move on to item 18, discussion and possible action regarding rulemaking proposals. Christy, over to you.
So we have a couple actions that we need on the regulation packages that the board is working on. Our first item is our SB 803 cleanup. We originally had the board approve these items, but in the review we have a couple of changes that need to be made. One, we want to add simplified Chinese to the languages that are offered for the examination in regulation. So that is one item that we want to add. And also on number 2, on page 1 of your memo, it states for our mobile unit application, it states, an information on the adequate ventilation for a mobile unit, and we are recommending that we add in, which includes at least one window capable of opening and a powered ventilation fan. So those are our 2 proposed changes that we have seen as we've been going through this process. So we would need a motion, and we have actually added what that motion should say in your packet. It's quite extensive on page 2, but it does show that under action needed, staff needs the following motion to authorize those 2 changes and reauthorize initiation of the rulemaking.
Okay, do we have any comments or questions from board members? If not, can I get a motion? And just as a reminder, you can have Sabina read it and then say so moved, or you can read it yourself. All right, first, any comments or questions from board members about this? Nope. Okay, can I get a motion? And again, the text of the motion is there in our materials.
Okay, I can do it. I move to rescind the board's prior October 24th, 2022 motion and approve the proposed regulatory text for Title 16 CCR Section 904, 909, 931, 932, 937, 962, 928, 934, 950.1, 950.2, 950.3, and 950.4, as provided in the meeting materials in attachment 2. Direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review, and if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period and no hearing is requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations at sections 904, 909, 931, 932, 937, 962, and repeal the sections 928, 934, 950.1, 950.2, 950.3, 950.4 as noticed.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second.
Great. So Member Tanya Fairley seconds. Thank you. Can we take public comment at this time on this item? All right. I don't see any in-person public comment. Moderator, can we take online public comment?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment on the motion, you can look for the question mark icon, fill in the text box with the word comment and click send, or anyone may look for the raise hand icon and raise your hand to be recognized. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. Are there any comments on the motion? And I do not see any comments, any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, thank you. And may we have a roll call vote?
Callie Mae Sam,
Yes?
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Colette Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Danielle Munoz,
Yes.
Jacob Rostovsky,
Yes.
Steve Weeks.
Could you please restate the motion? I'm a yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, on to item 18C1. Christy?
Okay, so our next item is on our regulation package for transfer of credit. This regulation package required a 45-day comment period, and during that comment period, the board did receive 2 public comments. The comment responses, we have to draft a suggested response to those comments, are in your packet. So the first comment is listed under comment number 1, and then on the next page, you'll see our response that has been prepared to this comment. We feel that this comment is already addressed in the existing regulation package, and our second comment is also listed, and again, on this comment as well, we feel that no further changes are needed for the text. And so for this item, we have, the board would need to consider a couple different options. Options 1 is if you agree with our recommended responses that we've prepared in the packet, you can direct staff to proceed as recommended to reject these comments as specified and provide the responses to the comments as indicated in the meeting materials, so what we've provided here. Or if you decide not to, if the members if you have any edits that you wanted us to add to any of these comments, then we would go into option number 2 to direct staff to accept the following comments and make any of the following edits to the text. So that's the first step that I believe the board should discuss.
Okay, thank you, Christy. For the purpose of this part of the discussion, can I just ask, do we have any board members who don't agree with the staff's recommended responses? Okay, so I don't see any. If there are no changes, can I get a motion regarding option number 1? You gotta read it.
You gotta read it.
I'm sorry, am I missing something? Because I don't see option number 1 under comment number 1. I see it comment number 2.
So you're going to look on page 3, under action needed, there's option number 1 and option number 2.
So we're applying both of these to both, okay, that's what I was trying to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments from the board members? I believe we're on the verge of a motion. Great, and Steve, could you read that?
Option 1.
Okay. So Steve, would you like to move and read that sentence?
Dan. We have this board direct staff to proceed as recommended to reject comments as specified and provide the responses to the comments as indicated in the meeting material.
Okay, can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Jacob, for the second. Okay, at this time, let's take public comment on this motion. I don't see any in-person public comment. Can we open online public comment?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you have a comment on the motion, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or you can click on the hand icon to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please, thank you. And may we have a roll call vote?
Callie Mae Pham,
Yes?
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Kelly Funk,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Colette Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Danielle Munoz,
Yes.
Jacob Rosofsky,
Yes.
Steve Weeks.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Motion passes. So let's move on to item 18C2. This is also a kind of choose your own adventure option. So please, Christy.
Yes. So because we just had that decision, we will need the board to discuss making another motion on this package. And option 1 states that if there were no changes to the proposed text by members, which we didn't make any changes, that we would ask for a motion to direct staff to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking process, including the filing of the final rulemaking package with the Office of Administrative Law, authorize the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes to the proposed regulation and rulemaking documents, and adopt the proposed regulations as noticed in 16 CCR section 950.10.
All right, so Christy's already read the motion. Does anyone like to move?
So moved.
Thank you, Megan. Can we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and Steve seconds. Thank you. Any public comment from those in person? Okay, can we check for online public comment?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you have a comment, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. Is there any comment on the motion? I do not see any request for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you. May we have a roll call vote?
Callie Mae Pham,
Yes?
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Kelly Funk,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Yolanda Jimenez,
Yes.
Colette Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Danielle Munoz,
Yes.
Jacob Rosofsky,
Yes.
Steve Weeks.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Chrissy, is there anything else under this agenda item that we need to discuss or
Just a
take action?
couple updates on regulations, just that the board staff is continuing to work on the apprenticeship regulations. We're very close to submitting those to our regulations legal counsel for review. And then we're also working on schools and externs and also our disciplinary guidelines. So hopefully the board will be seeing those packages soon.
Thank you so much, Christy. Okay, so at this time, let's move on to item number 19, public comment on items not on the agenda. So things that were not on the agenda today. Are there members of the public that would like to comment on things not on the agenda? Okay, it looks like we do have an in-person comment.
Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. It has come to our attention because members have been served papers for lawsuits against their websites for not being ADA compliant. Not their physical spaces, but because licensees are up there using Google My Business, or they're just using a booking platform, and there are individuals in the community that are coming after our license types and filing lawsuits in Los Angeles County so far and other counties. And I just wanted to make the board aware of this instance because I feel that because of the possibly a little loosey-goosey nature of some of our licensees, that this will become a problem. And I know that this is probably not within the scope of practice for this board to address, but I feel that the agency and the board should be made aware of this situation, because at minimum, it's a frivolous lawsuit, and they have to hire attorneys and chase down a $4,000 minimum fine, a maximum fine of $25,000 in LA courts, and chase down being intimidated and harassed by frivolous lawsuits from now until the court date that is actually filed out into the end of 2024. So if you hear more about this, be prepared, because our industry probably does need a little bit of an overhaul with taking into consideration people with disabilities and making sure that their websites, their booking, their Google My Business is all up to speed and being compliant with ADA requirements on a federal level. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on items not on our agenda? Anyone here? All right. Let's move to online public comment on items not on the agenda.
And we've opened up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. Any suggestions or mentions of items that were not on today's agenda, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box there and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. And I see no request for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes. Oh, I apologize. Let's return to in-person public comment. Looks like someone would like to make a comment. Thank you, moderator.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
My name is Phyllis Lyons.
Oh, can you speak into the microphone so that those online
Good
can
morning, everybody. My name is Phyllis Lyons, and I'm new to the community. And I would like to have a little more information in regards to the apprenticeship program you were talking about in regards to the apprenticeship. And by me being new, I'm trying to get more information because my goal is to see, after 30 years of being in business, I want to find out how I can work with you guys, what is I need to do to apply, or maybe this is the wrong time, but I do want to know more about the apprenticeship program.
And Chrissy, could you share about where that is? Yeah.
We have information online. The board members can't actually comment on public comment, but if you want to talk to one of our staff, we'd be happy to get you some information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other? Okay, I don't see any other further public comment in person. We've already closed the public comment online unless, all right. So let's move on to item number 20, suggestions for future agenda items. Do any board members have any suggestions for agenda items for our next meeting, which is scheduled for April 17th in Burbank? All right. I'm looking to my right. I don't see anybody raising their hand. To my left, I don't see anyone. Great. Are there any public comments for this item, for number 20, suggestions for future agenda items? Okay, I don't see any in-person public comment. Okay, one last time, online public comment.
And we've opened the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If anyone has suggestions for topics for future meetings, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment into that text box and click send, or you may use the raise hand icon to indicate that you'd like to make a comment. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. And I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to apologize to everyone. I didn't think everyone would come back from lunch so motivated to move right through the rest of the agenda. I would not have called for a break if I thought we were going to be so efficient on these last items. But with that, we will adjourn to our next meeting on April 17, 2023. Please check our website for any committee meetings that might be scheduled. In the meantime, thank you, everyone.